Hello everyone and welcome to Weekly Manga Recap. It's the 9th of November of 2022, and I'm looking forward to this mega-packed episode of Weekly Manga Recap, Quinn.
So much to talk about, you know? A lot of good manga, a recommendation, all sorts of... Who knows what characters are going to show up?
Yeah, I mean, like, one of them's shown up already, because you've still got Niputaku hanging out your microphone.
He's right there. He's with us
right there.
Always.
Even when you can't see him,
he's
there.
I will say, because it's the same setup I use for work, I do have to take him out when I do work meetings. Not because I'm worried about, like, someone being like, what is that? Because I'd be like, let me tell you about Magu-chan
my son.
Let me tell you about my boy. No, because I usually use, like, zoom filters to, like, blur out the background, and it doesn't get him. So it's just both of our
in and out.
It's just both of our faces going in and out. So I take him down for that.
That's understandable. I'm sure the Niputaku would just get bored during those anyway.
Oh yeah, he'd hate it. But he loves talking about manga. He's like, I love it. It's great.
Yeah. Especially when we talk about food occasionally. Yeah.
Talk about manga.
It's a shame that Magu-chan came out well after Food Wars, because otherwise...
I don't want to think about the characters from Magu-chan having to eat food from Food Wars and having those reactions, so I'm simply going to say I want Niputaku to eat that super good-looking, like, bacon-wrapped potato or whatever, and that's about it.
Okay, fair enough. Guys... chilling out with the crew in the schoolyard. Finding trouble, never looking too hard. Back at class, they never taught us this. Sometimes you've got to learn. Hit or miss.
Classic.
It's Yu-Gi-Oh! GX, the manga.
These are poets of our time.
I have been so excited to talk about this manga since... not you, but, you know, Yami Yugi decided we were going to be reading it. Yu-Gi-Oh! GX, I've talked about it at various different points, like how, like, kind of, it sort of happened at, like, a critical point in my anime fandom life. It was this thing that actually got me to, like, go and pursue stuff that wasn't just, like, on American TV, but, like, to venture out into the internet and find out that there was stuff that was already out there in Japan. It's the first series the first anime that I actually watched in Japanese. And I watched it without subtitles and just kind of had to use context clues to make my way through what the hell was going on, which was usually pretty easy because... I knew the rules of the game.
And as we all know, Yu-Gi-Oh! TV shows always, to the letter, follow the established rules of Yu-Gi-Oh! The card game.
I mean, by this point in the anime production, it's a hell of a lot closer than what we tended to get in like Duelist Kingdom.
Duelist Kingdom was the Wild West. There were no. It was a step away from Whose Sign Is It Anyway, where it's just like the rules don't matter, just make them up as you go. But even from like a vague angle. Now I also know, like, I come from a background where like Magic the Gathering is a game I play, and like the rules in Magic the Gathering are like so fine and precise that, like,
yes,
I oftentimes have to remember that other games don't have that firmly established thing. Because there was plenty of times where I'm like, the battle phase has ended and he summoned new monsters that are also attacking. This doesn't seem probable.
Oh, you know, maybe he used a quick effect.
Maybe that's how it works. In my mind, I'm like, no, attacks go through, you move to blockers, damage is calculated, independent of the stack nowadays.
The stack. For those of you not aware, Yu-Gi-Oh is the biggest trading card franchise in the world still, and Yu-Gi-Oh GX is the third, technically, anime series that is based off of the original manga. Although in this case, it's based on entirely new material because there was no GX manga prior to the anime. The manga followed. It was being written relatively concurrently with the anime, but because the chapters were released monthly, uh, it ended up going until like 5Ds. The next series was almost over, and then it stopped. This is a series that ran from like 2005 to 2011, like twice as long as the anime did. Yet there's way less content because it was only a monthly manga series compared to a weekly anime series that ran every single week for 3.5 years. And it is very odd to see that because certain characters come into the narrative eventually that are there because they were in the anime and they're just kind of there to be there. And they don't really cohesively, cleanly fit into the story that had been established up to that point when they first start showing up. But the manga version of Yu-Gi-Oh! GX follows most of the original main cast of the GX anime. You've got Judai, Manjome, Sho. I'm going to be using Japanese names for this because these are the names that I started off like experiencing the series with. If you want to use English names, Quinn, that's perfectly fine with me.
I only know these characters as their English names. So I sat here being like, what are we going to talk about? Chumley!
Which is fine. Because if you're using English names and I'm using Japanese names, we'll be about as consistent as this manga is with names. Not to get dive too deeply into that to start with, but so the main character is named Judai or Jaden in English. He's got a rival character named Manjome, who is Chaz Princeton, which is a name I still hate.
What do you mean? You don't love them giving him like the most waspy name they could have possibly thought of? My name is Chaz. It's amusing to me, and I don't want to delve too far into like actual character stuff, but like from my understanding, the character of Chaz is like very different in the anime to the manga, where like
extremely
the anime he's a bit more of like kind of a butt monkey, I guess, or kind of like comic relief, whereas in this series he's meant to be taken very seriously. So like dramatic scenes have to show up where it's like, Chaz, what do you think? And I'm like, I cannot take this moment seriously. A character named Chaz just ruins any moment.
Manjome in the original anime starts off as being, this really high-ranking student who Judai knocks down a bunch of pegs because he keeps on beating him, despite the fact that he's like, "I'm the elite, you obelisk blue student. You're just a slifer slacker," as they ended up doing it in the dub. And so that was basically why he was named the way that he was. Like, he's like, "Oh, he's Chaz Princeton. He's just some loser guy who's just rich and thinks he's great." Not really, taking into account the fact that maybe later on he would have like different sides of his character introduced. And so, yeah, he's just constantly Chaz Princeton, and it's not great.
Yeah.
Then there is Judai's little buddy Sho, who is Cyrus in the dub. He is the same age as Judai, but still calls him basically a big brother figure because he looks up to him. He's his hero. Then there is Asuka, or Alexis. She is the girl. I wish there were more to say, but female leads in Yu-Gi-Oh! Are perpetually sadly neglected. She actually comes off better in this manga than she does for the most part in the anime because she gets sidelined really hard in that. Okay. And then there is a kind of brainy sort of rival, basically the Ida to Judai's Deku, named Misawa, Bastion Misawa in the dub. And that's like the main group of like good guys that are carried over from the anime into the manga. As Kun was alluding to, Chumley, or Hayato, did not make the cut because he is just kind of a lazy, sad sack loser. And that's just kind of it. He was written out of the series after the first season and basically never came back except for like one cameo. So I don't really fault the author of this series for leaving him out of it.
Yeah. There's apparently a good handful of like other characters that exist in this series or exist in the anime that don't show up in the manga for a multitude of reasons. The manga, while running for about the same amount of time, just has so much less material to cover. Like if you were to animate what the manga covers, it would probably cover like a season and a half, maybe 2 seasons. But I don't think that actually really works to the detriment of the series all that much. By and large, I've found the characterization it does, especially like early on, to be excellent, like really, really excellent. And I wish it carried through all the way because it does give you a reason to care about all of these kids, essentially. Like, I know of GX from a very vague viewpoint, essentially, of like, hey, I watched like 2 or 3 episodes. This was far after I'd kind of gotten out of Yu-Gi-Oh! So I knew like the general premise, but I was like, I don't know, shows like little nerd kid, and then like Alexis's girl, and then Chaz was, I didn't even know he becomes a loser. I was just like, he's like the Seto Kaiba rival character. And this series takes its time to like one by one go to those characters and give them like a reason for like, hey, these characters actively really care about dueling. And it's not always perfect, but some of them have like really well done like character moments. Like Sho has a fight, or Cyrus, that like ends with him being like, I'm proving my worth as a duelist. And the way I'm proving it is I'm going to cover myself in a shield of armor, like a suit of armor, that if it's destroyed, I straight up lose the game. But that is the fucking, the price I'm willing to pay to show my worth in this moment. I was like, this is supremely cool for a character I gave 0 shits about based off what I saw in the anime. Which, again, admittedly, not a lot.
And yeah, I mean, like, if you try and experience the GX anime, it's like, well, what parts do you skip? Because there are long stretches of it where really the only thing that's happening is that some one-off guy shows up and Judai beats them in a duel, and that's about all that is accomplished. There are long stretches where that's like the only stuff that's happening, and occasionally, like, okay, there are some fun things that happen here or there. There are some, completely pointless battles that Judai gets involved in that generate some really fun things. That either just like small little moments in a bottle that are just kind of cool. Like the one time where he dueled a guy who was possessed by the spirit of the Grim Reaper, which gave him amazing one-turn kill draw abilities. It was great. And that happens like one episode and never becomes relevant ever again. But there's another time where, there's this girl who sneaks into the school because she's got a crush on Ryo or Zane, the Kaiser of the Duel Academy. And so she pretends to be a male student while sneaking into the school, and Judai duels her. And basically, like, after that, her secret comes out and she's got to leave. And instead of having a crush on the Kaiser, she's got a crush on Judai now. And she was such a popular character that she came back as a recurring character like 2 seasons later. So there are fun moments in Yu-Gi-Oh! GX that are especially really, really fun to reminisce on if you, have already been through 150 episodes of it like I did when the show was first coming out. But like, if you were to try and get into the series and like really get into it, you'd be like, well, nothing's really happening beyond like introducing some characters for like the first 30 episodes of this. When's the plot going to start? And in contrast, the manga introduces its characters in a much more succinct way. And then after it gets a much smaller, very core cast introduced, then it's like, all right, now it's time for story. Here's Judai's backstory in order to set up how he relates to the actual ongoing plot that's going to go on, which is something that took the anime literally like 3 seasons to ever do with Judai. He very rarely actually had personal stakes associated with something until much later in the series. And then the villains start showing up, they start causing trouble, and then you're just kind of off from there. And it's like, okay, from about 15 or so chapters in, it's just like, no, everything from here on is basically plot relevant stuff.
Yeah, I mean, I would say the start of this manga is really, really excellent. It introduced our characters in like an engaging way, and I enjoyed following them, etc. We find out who they are. Well, Bastion sucks. Bastion's like gimmick is like
Sucks.
I have a crush on Alexis, and that's about it. So he kind of blows. But like we get the good.
It's better than his characterization of, well, he used to be the smart guy, but then he got turned into the guy who has a crush on an Amazoness, and was it. So
that's interesting.
Poor guy. Yeah.
I would say there's sorry, just to back up. I really enjoyed the characters, and I enjoyed the start, how we introduced ourselves to them. And as you said, then we get like backstory to Judai, Jaden, and that was really good. And then there's like a tournament with amongst the kids, and like they put plot in there. There's like 2 American students who are like evil, and that's excellent. It then leads to like some really cool duels amongst them, and then it leads to a level of grandiose that really I don't think we can recapture completely from Yu-Gi-Oh, because Yu-Gi-Oh just exists in a place where you're like, why is all of this is so crazy? But now that's just kind of the norm. But it is worth noting that like they have like this big inter-school tournament to decide who gets a chance to face one other student who's just coming back, basically.
Look, Kaiser's time is valuable, okay?
And they have this tournament. And then they're like, all right, well, the winner gets a chance to duel this person. And of course, the only appropriate place to have this duel is on top of an active volcano. And you're like, sure. Like, it's kind of to that point where I did enjoy it, where I'm like, this is so stupid. Like, why is the duel on top of, like, a volcano? It's so overdramatic for a fight that has, like, 0 real stakes in it, because it's, like, 2 characters who have just met for the first time. But it is kind of cool. And then there's like some follow-up after that where we start delving a little bit more into Jaden and his sort of focus and how he wants to develop his deck. And, you know, we run into Mackenzie, who is this character who is like sort of a victim puppet to a larger antagonist. Yeah. But she has like 2 really cool duels in the series that are like really satisfying to watch. And then that ends. And, like, we get introduced to, like, 4 more American students. And the manga, I think, does kind of fall off at that point because one needs to introduce these, I guess, technically 5 new American students. It doesn't really have enough time to develop all of them, but still tries to. It needs to give them all duels. We go through, like, 2, like, tag matches that are not interesting. Like, those were, like, the only 2 things where I was like, I skipped through a lot of dueling, to be honest. I was like, I'm going to trust your cards, do what it does. I just tried to read, like, the narrative within it when it's, like, all sorts of nonsense. Although I do have a card effect that I want to bring up later.
Okay.
You know, but those duels just didn't do a lot. It's like, hey, Bastion and Alexis learned to work together, ? I guess I had to be grateful because it's, like, the only time fucking Alexis wins in the goddamn manga. She really does, like, lose pretty much every match she's in. When they split up into different sections and an American duelist finds them, when you saw she got matched up against fucking Ast, you're like, oh, you poor girl. Like, there's not even a chance this is going to have to look like a really close match.
Yeah, it gets kind of frustrating towards the end. I am 100% in agreement with you because while the manga does not fall into the same trap that the anime does, where only Judai is allowed to do important stuff, it does fall into the trap of only Judai and Manjome are allowed to do stuff. It's like one step above in that regard. And look, I really, really do like what the manga did differently with Manjome because he is like my favorite character from GX. And it was so nice to see him not just be the guy who loses so that it proves how big a threat this thing is, so that then Judai has to beat it, basically. Like, you know, he's anime Manjome is very fun because he's very funny, and also very cool, and also a very big loser. He is an amazing paradox that makes him incredibly entertaining. Manga Manjome is a guy who loses his first duel in the series to Judai because Judai has a spirit partner, Winged Karibo, who he, has a bond with and fights with. And Manjome also has a dual spirit, but he has sealed it away because he wants to be strong on his own. And when he loses, it makes him realize, I want to be strong with you, my partner. Will you, my awesome fucking dragon, be with me and partner with me, and we'll destroy everything? And then they fucking do. He just teams up with this badass dragon and fucking wins like everything that he does.
I was gonna say, he basically he loses to eventually Zane.
He loses to the Kaiser, yes.
But outside of that, I think he wins every other duel he's involved with. Which Jaden doesn't even have that record.
Judai loses probably more in this manga than he does in like the entire 180 episode long anime. To give you an idea of how much Judai dueled and how little he lost. And it is actually really nice to see him have to fall down and pick himself up. Judai is also probably pretty different in some respects from how he is in the anime because his character arc is much more condensed in that regard. But yeah, he gets cool moments. Manjome gets some cool moments, especially in that duel where he loses against the Kaiser. Like, before he loses, he summons all three of his awesome dragons in one turn in this big badass 2-page spread. And then the Kaiser's just like, okay, I've got, this ridiculous, sequence of cards that I can play in a row, and then I win because I'm the best duelist in the series. Also, I'm never going to duel again this series because way too many characters get introduced later on after that point. But unfortunately, while early on, the rest of the core cast do get their moments to shine, even if a lot of times they're losing. Like Asuka, like you said, loses, I think, every other duel that she's in besides that tag duel, I think. But, she at least has a lot more plot-relevant moments, and she is a presence within the series that is consistent, along with Sho and Misawa. And, then once it gets to the point where, okay, we're kind of at this nice break point where the initial antagonist has been defeated, now we have to see who the real villain is. And so they introduce their next set of, evil generals, basically, who are students from the American Academy that were in the third season of the anime. And a lot of their backstory is very different. And their function is also very different because they each kind of had their own agendas going on in the anime. And now it's just like, well, they're just all kind of students at this one academy, and they have their own different character quirks. And they're mostly just there so that the rest of the big important card set that is plot relevant to this series, the legendary planets, can get used. And then that's just kind of it.
A plot point, by the way, that doesn't make a ton of sense. Because it's like established, like, oh, hey, our big bad guy whose name I've forgotten, Trogelion or something like that, or Tragodia.
Tragoedia, I think.
Something like that. They were sealed away a very, very long time ago, the time of, like, Pharaoh Atem and everything like that. He didn't know that this guy got sealed away, but it was sealed away by a couple Egyptian priests, and the winged spirit was a presence there, and also, like, the white feather of Mott, I think is the other term used. So there's, like, these two, those are the two spirits, essentially, that exist in the real world, and he's like, I have to get those things to fully free myself. And then also this explicit set of cards that were developed, one of by a dead duelist that I took control of at some point. And one of them was like a giveaway in a tournament that then got passed along to another person because I sent that guy to the Shadow Realm. And it's one of these things where you're like, this sounds like a very complicated thing. Like, it's basically like, what if we did the Egyptian god cards, but like 8 of them, and they're all very significant.
The overarching plot of the series is very original Yu-Gi-Oh! And it's honestly kind of one of my complaints about this manga is that it feels too much like original Yu-Gi-Oh! And not enough like Yu-Gi-Oh! GX. It feels like we're kind of taking a step backwards in order to do this plot. I didn't find Tragodia interesting
I found him
at all.
I found him mildly amusing when he gets free because he eventually just beats everybody off screen to like finish his plot, and he's like, "I am now free. I am a super god." And like Jaden and Chaz show up and they're like, "We're gonna fight you," and he's like, "I am a super god." They're also just like they ask him like, "Why are you doing all of this?" He's like, "Because I was bored." I feel like
It is all for my amusement.
I thought it would be funny. And he like takes their cards and he like their best cards and tosses them back to him. He's like, "I don't need these anymore. Let's duel." Because he's like, "I'm a super god. Even like I could just destroy you with the thought of my mind. But let's duel first." And you're like, "Fuck, man. I want that exact energy in my life." Where after I finished my plan, I'm like, "Yeah, fucking take your best cards back. I don't need them anymore."
Oh god. And yeah, there's just like all these cards that have to be introduced as part of this legendary planet set. And at first it's like they're being introduced like very occasionally. So, Judai has Earth, or I mean it got called Terra Firma for whatever reason, and when the card got brought over to the TCG, so it's Terra Firma, not Earth, even though it's plot relevant, never mind. And then there's also when the first two American students, David and Mackenzie, show up. David has the Big Saturn, which is one of the best names in the entire card game. The Big Saturn.
It's great because all of them have a name like the Splendid Venus, the Glorious Sun, all this sort of shit, and it's just like Big Saturn. It is really strong. The Super Smash Brothers Melee announcer who's like, "Ice Climbers, Luigi, Ganondorf." It's just like, all right,
I thought
Big
I thought you were going for. I thought you were going for like giant Donkey Kong.
It does have that as well.
It's just big.
Big Saturn. I don't know.
Which, by the way, I don't know if you can guess. Just take a wild guess here. Which of the planets is actually the most broken card in the actual card game?
I'm so vaguely remembering what their powers did.
A lot of them are just like
a lot of them
it
seem
gets
very
stronger.
specific, to like the deck that they're in. Because a lot of them are themed very specifically. Like it was very amusing that the guy with the crocodile deck. Like, thank God there was a card that one of the planets was a crocodile monster. Because this would be stupid otherwise. I mean, they make the sun look really strong, but I'm going to assume it's not that one. I feel like Venus actually did quite a lot, the fairy one. If you're in a fairy deck, obviously, but...
So, you are not... You're wrong, but you probably picked what I think would be considered the second best one. And Venus on its own isn't great, but it came out with a lot of really good fairy support because Mackenzie's deck was very prominently featured. So, like, a lot of her best cards got released. And in tandem with them, it was pretty good. But it's actually Neptune, the one that you just named, that Cook uses, because as it turns out, it has an ability that basically, if it combos with one more recently released card that lets you do 5,000 direct damage to your opponent really easily.
That feels like a flaw. So wait,
so they banned it.
I have a question. Are all these cards real? Like, did they print... Like, are there crocodile archetypes and shit like that? Like, most of these archetypes, as I saw them, I was like, I understand this. Like, Cyber Dragons, I know is straight from the anime, and I was like, all right. Some of this stuff, like, is different, but I could see it. Like, oh, okay, a yokai theme, got it. And then, like, Atticus just has, like, air shit. I was like, sure, whatever. Close enough. It got the crocodile guy threw me off for a little bit. I was like, there cannot. Also, this is the American duelist guy. This guy is clearly a cowboy. I know that there are alligators in Texas, but these are not the two things I would immediately link together. Like, the first time I saw it, I was like, is he a Crocodile Dundee parody?
So, a couple of things. One, you're correct that a lot of the stuff that is in the manga is not in the anime. They changed a bunch of characters' decks. Judai still uses elemental heroes. Sho did use Vehicroids, although he uses very different cards. and Kaiser still uses Cyber Dragon cards, and that's basically it. Almost everyone else went through like dramatic changes to their deck types, including Jim. And the reason he uses a crocodile deck is because in the anime he uses a fossil deck instead. But for some reason, he just carries around his pet alligator on his back all the time. Or his pet crocodile, I should say.
This brings me back to the point. There's a card I have a big issue with in this series. And it goes back to when we see the tag team duels. And we have the crocodile guy there. And when you're in the tag team duels, you lay a card face down. Your partner can look to see what the card is you played face down.
Yeah,
Crocodile guy plays a face down card. He is teamed up with a guy who is using machine monsters. And the machine monster guy looks at the trap card. He's like, Crocodile Scales, a card that raises the attack of all machine monsters. And you're like, why is this in the crocodile guy's deck? Why? Like, it is so uber specific. They did not have time to pre-construct their decks after they knew who their partners were. They just fucking showed up and they're like, all right, game on. And my dude was just like, the card name's got crocodile and it's got to go with the crocodile deck, you know?
I've always found the dueling in any Yu-Gi-Oh manga to be a bizarre mix of almost all of these guards are absolutely worthless. They are way too specific in terms of the circumstances that they would be useful in, and they're just kind of just being written as, the duel is being figured out. It's like, and we'll put in a card here that'll raise the attack of this type of monster 300 points. Ooh, and then it'll be like, oh, okay, these cards are broken as shit because they're like, indestructible 5,000 attack monsters that also let you punch your opponent in the face every turn. They're ridiculous. But that leads me into talking about one of the unfortunate problems I had while reading the series is I read the Viz version of this, and there seemed to be a real inconsistency with the quality of the translation at certain points. It really felt to me as if at certain points it was being either written or translated by a person who wasn't really familiar with the terms of the game. And so there would be these very bizarre phrases that would get used, like continuous cards would be called like eternal traps and stuff like that. And that was a little bit weird. But what was very strange was I made the point at the beginning when we were talking about this, there's the Japanese names and the English names, because when the series was dubbed by 4Kids, a lot of characters' names were changed. So there are certain characters in the series that are manga only. There's the first two American students, David and Mackenzie, and then there is Koyo, who is like Jai's mentor / hero figure, and his sister Midori. And all of them keep their original names because there's no dub that you have to conform to the style of. So it's a little bit weird to go back and forth and be like, oh, okay, here is Chaz Princeton, and here is Koyo Hibiki, this very Japanese sounding name in the same series. But then there would be points, especially later on when like the 5 American students all get introduced, where they'll be like introduced by their dub names, and then they'll go back to like their original Japanese names at certain points, and then it'll go back, and it just goes back and forth for them. I saw Johan get called Johan, then Jesse, then Johan. It was very strange.
I thought I just got the character's name wrong. I didn't even pick up on it. I was like, oh yeah, his name's Johan. And I was like, no, it was Jesse. Because it was very amusing when all the American characters show up and it's like Aster, Phoenix, and then like a list of just great. Like I think there's one dude who's like, it's a second away from like Boomer Liaison or something. You're just like, all right, man. You say like all these guys will make great quarterbacks with these names.
Jim Crocodile Cook is the only guy whose name wasn't changed because that was just his original name. Johan became Jesse for some reason.
Axel Brody or something like that.
He was Austin O'Brien, which again is like,
they did change that. They definitely changed that because I definitely saw an Austin at one point. So
And Amon is Adrian Gecko,
Yeah.
which is like this
Another great quarterback name. Like Adrian Gecko steps back, has a sad backstory about like his sick dying brother or whatever. We don't have time to resolve that plot line. The bad guys have won.
They get introduced. They use the legendary planets like once each. Some of them hint towards having their own things going on that never really gets resolved. And then it's like, well, we have to do the final battle. So the villain beats them all up and steals all the planets back so that he can use them to unlock his powers. And then he duels Manjome and Judai, and they beat him and end the series. It gets resolved very quickly.
I will say that even though the plot itself gets resolved very quickly, that final duel is a satisfying duel. There are nice twists and turns. Like they get him down to like 200 life points, and then he shoots back up to like 8,000 or some shit like that. You truly do feel like at that point, you're like, how the fuck do these guys get out of this? Like things look so dire. So there are a lot of really satisfying moments like that. But I think the introduction of the American, like the extra American students, just adds so much to the plot, and there's this necessity to like feed them storylines and also kind of deal with the other kids that just doesn't, there just wasn't enough time to deal with any of it. So all that stuff just feels rushed. Like when we finally do get to like individual duels, we see Jaden fight Gecko, and then the other 4 duels basically happen concurrently and have the exact same story beat where like the American duelist draws their planet card when they're on the ropes, plays it. They're like, I don't remember putting this in my deck, and then win, with the exception of Chaz, who like overcomes it and wins his match. But other than that, everyone loses. And you're just like, yeah, this wasn't really that satisfying because they spent time building up like Jesse, who you're like, oh, this guy seems like he'd be a fun character. This like weird, and like one of the cooler moments of like self-awareness in the manga where they see him, they're like, he's like chasing bugs, and they're like, I wonder what his deck is, and he's like, oh, rhinoceros beetle, this is the best day of my life, and like, I bet he's an insectoid. Like, never mind, I think I figured it out, and I was like, hell yeah.
Very different from how he is in the anime, although similar vibes at least.
There you go. But yeah, like it feels like there was a plot line being built up for all of them. Like we mentioned, Gecko is like has a backstory to establish. Like he's so intense because it's like, I need to become a pro duelist because I have a 6th sibling on the line and I need money. But we just don't get the time to deal with all that. Zane, as you mentioned early on, like shows up and then just hangs out in the background. I truly do not remember what
he's doing the whole time.
I don't remember what happens to him at the end. Like he must have gotten beaten off screen. Well, I'm like,
no, he doesn't do anything.
I was like, Atticus got mind control, like got defeated and then got mind controlled, and I was like, okay, I remember what happened to Atticus. And I sit there, I'm like, Zane must have done something. Like even if we didn't see it, he must have been like knocked out. Like I've been defeated. He's too strong or whatever. And you're just like, fuck, man, this dude really like shows up and just exists in the background of shots to do nothing.
Yeah, I think that the series definitely starts to lose its steam about 2/3 of the way through. The very, very end, yeah, like you said, I do think the final duel at least has some big ups and downs. And it's nice to see Manjoa do important stuff all throughout the series. That's nice. And I would also say that, like, I really do think that, like, the build-up in the first half is really well done. I think that the, evil American students are effective villains. David is just this kind of, like, big asshole that you want to see get beat because he keeps on using his really shitty card to beat people. And then Mackenzie is a really, really compelling villain. When she's being evil, and then she, gets to be fleshed out and be more than just that when she has to stick around some more, at least.
There are 2 plot points I want to bring up about Mackenzie real quick.
Yeah.
1, there is a shot, Mackenzie duels the teacher, Miss Sabiki, and there is a shot of the 2 of them next to each other, and it was that moment that I realized there's basically only like 4 female characters in this series, like those 2, Alexis, and then there's the beauty queen pageant girl who shows up like twice. Every female character has the exact same body. I don't mean like they're all busty or whatever. Like I mean like the exact same body type, like to a T. That I have to presume women in that world all shop at one store because like all clothing comes in one size. It fits every body type here exactly. This is how it works. But the 2, Mackenzie is like when we're introduced to Atticus, we see he's like a skirt chaser, and eventually it's
Mm-hmm.
revealed like, hey, he's dating Mackenzie. It's also revealed Mackenzie has not been she's been mind controlled since she's like 6 years old
Yeah.
or a child, some like point like that. It is never addressed, and I wasn't expecting them to fully get into it, but you were expecting one comment after she gains her like mind that like Atticus would be like, you're a lot different than you used to be. Like this is like a radically different thing that's kind of been going on.
Yeah.
Like, here's the thing. I don't want to say like, oh, they were in love. This could have been like a fling. It could have been fucking like a relationship of convenience, whatever. But it is one of these things you're like, this person you've been seeing is significantly different than she was before this.
Yeah, I think that there is someone, it might be Phoenix, who says that she's back to acting like her old self at some point. But yeah. And it is also kind of one of the little frustrating things is that because she's not actively dueling after she gets freed from her evil mind control, that she does fade a little bit when it's like, okay, you had kind of the hook that the hook caught something, and then we didn't reel it in. Basically,
she I believe like stumbles onto the plan, and then the bad guy's just like Shadow Realm with you, and that's her.
Give me your card. Yeah.
That's her involvement in the series.
That's basically it. But while she's evil, she gets some of the best moments of Yu-Gi-Oh villainy I've ever fucking seen. There is a bit where she duels Miss Hibiki, who is like kind of built up as being potentially like the best duelist in the fucking world. And she's like countering all of her moves with like no monster cards because her deck is basically purely very high level monsters. So she's just knocking her back with trap cards and stuff, and then she gets like a bunch of these big dark angels out, and she's going to finish off Mackenzie, and Mackenzie's like, wait, if you beat me in the Shadow Realm, in the Shadow Duel, then I'll die, and you won't find out what it will take in order to revive your brother from the coma that he's in. So Hibiki's like, well, shit, I can't lose the duel, but I can't beat her because I've got to find out, so I've just got to like stall for time. And as a result of that, because she's not trying to win the duel anymore, it just gives Mackenzie enough time to slowly set things up and work her way back. And she ends up winning the duel right when Hibiki gets to resolve to try and finish her off because she took too long, and so she turned it around.
Basically, like missed one turn of attack, and that one turn is what sealed the deal.
If she had decided to do it one turn earlier, she would have won, but she loses because of the mind games Mackenzie plays. And as she's collapsing, because, she's going to be sent to the Shadow Realm, essentially, Mackenzie goes, well, in exchange for the good duel, I'll tell you how to revive Koyo. I don't know. It's such an asshole.
It's very cool. I will go on the record as saying that was probably my favorite duel in the manga. There were a lot of really good ones, but that was definitely the one where it's like, I'm really enjoying this. Again, like, I don't pay attention to the card effects. I don't know if, like, mechanically that was an interesting duel at all, but, like, the flavor of everything was pretty cool.
Very good stuff.
What was your favorite duel?
Series. It was either that or it was the duel between Manjome and Ryo, the Kaiser, because it's like extremely short what happens between them, but it's it's like Brock Lesnar Goldberg. They just go all out from the very beginning, and it's just over. And also they're just very good storytelling duels. Yeah. It's like even if you don't understand the mechanics, you understand what happened in it. So overall, I would say, especially if you are a fan of Yu-Gi-Oh! GX, then you should at least check out this series. If you're into Yu-Gi-Oh! In general, I say give it at least a try. And unfortunately, like the last third-ish, the landing doesn't really get stuck. But the first 40 chapters especially are definitely worth reading and checking out because there's some, different stuff that gets done with some characters you might already be familiar with, and it's worth seeing the different stuff that gets done with them. There's a really good tight core cast in that first like 2/3 of the story, and I quite enjoyed going through this, and it did make me feel very nostalgic and good.
Yeah, for having no context for the anime beyond like a very surface level thing, I still enjoyed myself. I thought it was fun. It gets a little extra at times, which is what I enjoy. Not as much as I would like, and some characters don't get to do a whole lot, which is a little bit of a bummer, but it is still entertaining. I will also say the series ends with like a cliffhanger of like, not a cliffhanger, but like, hey, this guy's about to duel some other guy. Like Jaden's about to have a big fight with somebody. That's going to be cool. And then it kind of ends. And then there's a one shot that occurs afterwards that that shows the duel, but also doesn't finish it. It also ends with like next move, and you're like, what was the point of this ultimately? I will say that if you are curious to see that, so if you're reading this through Viz, know that the Viz volumes end with Jaden about to go into that duel. And if you want to read that duel, you would have to have, or I don't know if you could still buy the old issues of Shonen Jump. It was the December 29th of 2014 edition. Has that extra one-shot chapter. Shout out to Ninja X3I who let us know about that.
Doing the legwork on that.
Yeah. So if you are curious, you can find that extra chapter. But I will also say it doesn't end the series that much better. I guess you get to see Alexis in a different top. I was gonna say like you get to see the other characters in the new design, but I was like, I think Alexis is the only one you actually get to see any kind of like half body shot of. Like they cut to the crowd a lot, but they cut to just their faces, and I was like, fuck you, it's a time skip, give me something here.
Yeah, I think that last chapter before the cut is the only time that Manjome shows up in his signature outfit from the anime, which is the black coat.
Yeah.
So
yeah, but otherwise I really did have a good time with it. I would like, I need to stress this, I guess, like the episode where we did the original Yu-Gi-Oh! I think is one of my favorite episodes of Weekly Manga Recap we ever did. It was so fun getting to like read that series and just see how wild and crazy it is. And there is a difference now that like Yu-Gi-Oh! Is an actual game and there's rules and like all that sort of stuff exists. It's just a different beast that like can't quite reach the same thing. But I think with what it's become, it still becomes something that I would have like a passing interest in. So I dig this a lot. I'd recommend to anybody who wants to read something along those lines if you think you enjoy like Yu-Gi-Oh! But I will still say it also, you do have to read the card game stuff too. Like it does exist in that realm as well.
Yep. All right. Well, nice good discussion about GX. We've got a lot of manga to talk about
Let's
on top of that. So
do this.
Yes. So we're going to start off with My Hero Academia, chapter 372, Naked. So this is continuing the mutant battle, the heteromorph battle. There's a flashback that establishes, Shoji deciding that he wanted to go and defend the hospital. He and Koda did. They specifically asked All Might and Aizawa for that assignment. Shoji also says that he spent a little bit of time actually talking to the large mutant woman, who still doesn't get a name. She's been brought up so many times in this manga, and she still doesn't have a name. She's just that large woman over there. But Shoji is like, okay, so there's this group of heteromorphs. They're going to attack a hospital. I can't stand back while that's going to happen. Aizawa agreed to send them out there, but he also has specifically sent President Mike to keep an eye out for them. And President Mike has more confidence in them because, they're stronger. Stronger than he and Aizawa and whatever Kurogiri's real name is, I forget, were. Speaking of, Koda, we were making Hitchcock jokes last week. That's literally what he calls his attack. He calls it Hitchcock birds. Summoning a giant swarm of birds to attack people. Turns out that his quirk is like awakening or something because his horns have grown in, which his mother apparently told him was going to happen. And it allows him to not only talk to animals, but literally just psychically communicate with them, Aquaman style. Yes. So, upgrade for him. Meanwhile, Shoji unleashes his wind-up punch thing and just knocks Spinner through the air with scales flying off of him because he hit him so goddamn hard. And Shoji yells out to all the other heteromorphs like, you guys are just being exploited by these people who want to exploit your gifts and power. Don't let them exploit your wounds. Your children might be the next target. Be better than mere avengers.
This is like, That was like about like here's the thing. We talked in a large part last week about like how we're not like super excited about some of the execution of this like shoji heteromorph storyline. But that moment right there, I was like, fine. You know, you're saying your piece in this way that My Hero does, where it doesn't really say a whole lot, and it's just like it's very like Rocky Balboa ending the Cold War by just being like, if I could change, you could change, we all change, and a room full of Russians start cheering like, yeah.
He's right.
And I was fully prepared for that to be the conclusion to all of this, where I was just like, all right, satisfying, not the best landing, not anything even close, but like, I'm ready to wrap this up and head home. And then it's just like, you thought I was done, huh? Like, fuck, man.
Nope. So Spinner, who I will remind everyone was mindless and unable to follow basic conversations a moment ago, starts reciting, I think, from memory, what he had said previously, which is, he just talks about, the grudge against humanity and how if heroes win the day, then nothing is going to change for them. And he also brings up how he was sprayed with pesticide for walking in public, which is, ow. That's bad. And, he's like talking about like getting freaking revenge and stuff. So yeah, makes sense. Then he like King Kong bounds off of the walls of several buildings to just dash towards the hospital ahead of everyone else. And things start to get confusing. So I am just going to go through a series of images here. The crowd is still really riley. There are riot police trying to hold the crowd back. An officer raises his pistol. Cut. Interior of the hospital. Spinner has arrived. He is covered in debris. His scales are trailing off of him. He is remembering what All for One has told him to do and how to get to Kurogiri so that they can bring the conflict to an end in their favor. A line of doctors, including the Yoshi doctor that we've seen previously, are standing in front of a reinforced inpatient ward doorway. Cut to an image of Shoji screaming. Cut to an image of a horse doctor, his eyes wide. Cut to an image of a patient with his wife, mother, a woman holding his hand. Cut to a hallway because Spinner is now going down the hallway and he imagines himself as a little kid running down the hallway, thinking to himself, I never thought I'd get to be anyone, but by following you, maybe I could be somebody. Shigaraki, just watch me. I've got my allies behind me. But as he thinks that, there is no one behind him, because Spinner in real life has run far ahead of all of his allies, and so no one's there with him. Except for present Mike, who has been following him. And he says, Shoji must have gotten through to them. And listen, that guy in there ain't gonna be your ace in the hole. And then, simultaneously, the two of them yell out for Kurogiri / Shirakumo as Spinner bursts through the wall, or there was already a hole in the wall, or something. Quinn, can you walk me through some of what the fuck happened?
Okay, so I can, because I followed the conversation in our Discord, and our Discord listeners were very smart and finally figured this out. By the way, you go check out our Discord. A lot of really good conversations happen in there. So basically, like, Spinner does this whole speech, tries to rally everybody. They go. We get like what is, I guess, meant to be like a very cinematic shot of like Spinner coming in, gunshot shot, like sound effect over like a panel of an empty room, but then Spinner breaks in and he's crushed the cop that was holding the gun. It's very difficult to see, but underneath his right arm there is the guy. Then he rushes forward and we get the shot of like all the other people. And I don't know if it's just he went through a different entrance or we just don't really see the establishing shot. But the mob goes like they're the ones who see this line of doctors and are like, oh, we're not going to push through like that. The pig guy.
Oh, there's people behind him in that one shot. Jesus.
Yeah, like the horse pig guy or whatever he is I guess one of the bad guys, and he's recalling a scene that he's seen to some extent. He's like, oh right, shouldn't kill the doctors, and that's why none of them follow along, because the doctors are like blocking the pathway or whatever. It is a very difficult to follow sequence of stuff. I would not be able to follow it if our chat and Discord had not like kind of established what it was ahead of time.
So, because Spinner is raging, he runs ahead of the group and gets separated from them, because all the rest of them are like, oh no, doctors. And
that's why he's saying basically like Shoji must have gotten through to them. Like they finally came to their senses when they see like all these doctors standing in the way.
And it happened off screen, the way all great moments in storytelling.
It technically didn't. It just happened in such an uninteresting way where like a dude I don't know if we've seen before is like the focal point to all of this, of like, and a scene that I don't like. We must have met this character before, because otherwise I don't understand the context of him seeing the doctors and remembering a scene. So we must have met this character before at some point, but I have no context to what that is. Like it's truly like a dude sees doctors, thinks back to a scene, and he's like, I guess I'll stop.
Maybe it'll make more sense in the anime.
Hey. This chapter stunk. I like hated this chapter. I really think that this is like kind of established that I just don't vibe with the way Horikoshi paces his conflicts, because I truly thought like after Shoji's big like action fight moment and like the cool moment with the birds, I was like, all right, Spinner is done. And then Spinner gets back up and he's like, nah, I'm going to keep going. And I'm just like, this isn't like me saying like, this is a problem of the manga. This is me just saying, I do not vibe with the pacing of this series. I was ready to like put myself behind at that point. Instead, he keeps going, and it's not aided by the fact that like the following sequence is just really hard to read. And I'm just like, all right, fine. Like, I don't truly have that much of an interest in like, I knew we were going to have to deal with like Kurogiri and the all-present Mike Aizawa situation at some point, or Aikawa, whatever his name is. Aizawa. So I'm fine with that, but like, I like at this point, I'm like, I just want these villains to be done. I'm just tired of watching them exist still, because they all just get beat and they lose all the interest at that point for me. Like I was kind of like, I feel like the intrigue of Spinner having lost all of his mental faculties and then being defeated was kind of like, that was the fall for that character. Like this moment of him being like, all my friends are with me, but no one's following him. I was like, I don't really know what I'm supposed to feel there. Am I supposed to feel satisfied? Am I supposed to feel sad? Am I supposed to, I don't know. I'm not into this anymore.
Yeah. I'm sad now. Let's talk about Undead Unluck and fix that.
I don't want you to be sad. Undead Unluck. This is number 134. If you're the you that I knew. That's a tongue twister right there. Say that 7 times fast, Nick.
If you're the you that I knew. If you're the you that I knew. If you're the you that I knew. Fuck.
There you go. Boom. Thank God I said 7, not 3 times. Otherwise, I'd have looked like quite the fool. So it's 1972, Nick, New York City. That's what they sounded like back in New York. Yeah. And Nico opens the door saying, more religious solicitors. I'm an atheist now. Beat it, you. And Fuko says, long time no see. Let's slay God together, Mr. Nico. An awesome introduction. Fantastic. 10 out of 10. Really, truly. Nico closes the door. He's like, fuck this. And Fuko's just like, no, I'm going to get you to hear it. And just sort of walks through the door because there's like, it breaks open, but then pulls itself back together. And I do love that Nico's just like, what the fuck? And Fuko's like, oh, you dropped your cigarette. That's going to start a fire. We got to put out the stair. As he's like, what the fuck did you do to my door? It's still here. What are those cracks? What did you do?
She's like got a full-on blanket to smother the flame. It's ridiculous.
It's very, very cool. She explains like, hey, it's a UMA. I've got to explain everything going on. And we get like a shot, like the conversation has happened, and Nico is just like, UMAs, artifacts, and negators. I don't want to believe it. And I don't know if we know the name of the UMA that's traveling with her, but my dude's just chugging a fucking glass of Coke, and it's such a satisfying thing. I think it's just UMA move, but I'm not 100% positive if we've seen it like before this. We probably have. And Nico's just like, I don't want to believe it. And she's like, oh, you don't want to believe it? He's like, no, like, this is so crazy. Like, all these rules, like, all these scientists that I have admired and have spent their entire life dedicating to discovering the rules of the universe. And you're saying that these rules were just written by some shitty god? Like, this doesn't make sense. And Fuko's like, but I need you to believe it. He's like, who said I didn't? You think there's a scientist alive in the world who would encounter the unknown like this and simply look the other way? I don't want to believe it, but I will, so that the science can get closer to the answers. It's a very satisfying little character moment there.
Oh, yeah.
And it's just him being like, God, fuck, this is really complicated. So what do you need out of me? Fuko's like, that's great. I figured that if you were the Mr. Nico that I knew, you would say that. And I do like that this exchange happens in the way it does, because Nico's like, oh God, don't tell me I was your boyfriend or something. And it's like Nico being like, nah, not at all. That's ridiculous.
Why would I ever date you?
And Nico's just like, good, I'd be only interested in someone with the intelligence to match me. And I don't want any kids either. And you're just like, well, about that, buddy.
Well, one of those things happens.
He's like, so how are we going to make use of myself in science? You must have had something in mind. And Fuko pulls out her roadmap, and she's like, tragedies are about to start happening, and I need to stop those tragedies from happening. That's why I want you to lend your scientific mind to me. And Fuko's like, he's just like, what do you mean? He's like, yes, I'm negator of luck, aptly called unluck. If I touch someone that I like, I give them a stroke of us unluck. And thanks to that, in the previous loop, I caused an airplane accident that involved 270 passengers, including my parents. And he's like, okay, I get it. So all these incidents occur when we weren't able to deal with the sudden manifestation of all these really awful abilities. So now we're going to try to prevent them. And Fuko's like, great, you got this. So the first one, the key to all of this is Miss Gina Unchange. And I like it because Nico's like, Unchange, what does she do? I don't know, like ignore physics and prevent change and variation and things and shit like that. And Fuko's like, you got it, I won. And he's so pissed. He's like, does this god think science is a joke? What is this? And she's just like, yeah, her ability is really unique due to its versatility. It can do all these things. And if we can find Miss Gina and add her to the team, we can save another ally. And once we have their help, we can save another and another and so on until everyone is saved. And the others still haven't manifested their abilities. And out of everyone, you're the only one who has the scientific skills on par with negation abilities who would be able to, who would believe the story and cooperate with me. So I need you. And he's like, all right, cool. If I'm a part of this group, if I'm a part of this team, then you could have found any other scientist. You came all the way from me. What kind of negator do I become? And what kind of tragedy is awaiting me? And Fuko thinks back to everything, and she kind of thinks through her reasoning, and she's like, if he were to learn about Ichiko and to fall in love and be forced to suffer due to unforgettable, he would very likely just distance himself from Ichiko. And from what I saw on the artifacts information, he was at his highest scientific level so far in the past loop, which means that Ichiko's presence is essential. So in that case, if you touch the present, I can't tell you, no matter what. And he's like, wait, what are you saying? That bad things are in store for me and I shouldn't come up with a plan to prevent them from happening? And Fuko's like, yes. And he's like, and that I should keep helping you until the time comes? Yes. And he's like, what, just because you're so fucking full of baseless confidence? And she's like, no, not just me. I want you to trust me and all of the allies you're about to save. And if you do, I'll ensure that you're the happiest you've ever been in any loop. And she is sobbing as she says it. And that's enough to warm up Nico's like, sorry about it. You must have had a rough life. Let's do that. So they basically are like, all right, we stopped. Well, we didn't. I stopped on by stopping them from grabbing the G pen, which is what activated their ability. Miss Gina's ability can't be stopped, though. It is going to happen. And in 1972, in the Soviet Union, her ability will unconsciously activate, making the air around her unchangeable and causing the death of 40,000 civilians via asphyxiation. 40,000. So in order to prevent this tragedy, and Fuko hands Nico like a schematic and is like, I need you to make this a device to stop the spread of Unchange's air, an invention from the future.
Yeah, this is a really good chapter. I really love just this feeling of like, look, we're going to stop this sequence of horrible tragedies with the power of friendship.
It really...
I mean, it's not that simple because, like, each person that we save is going to have an ability that'll help us to save the next person, and that's why she's been working on this big roadmap with the last 100 years or so over time. But that feeling of that drives it forward is just like, we're all in this together, and because we're all in this together, we're going to make it through this okay, despite the absurd odds that are against us, and despite the fact that it's been failure after failure and tragedy after tragedy at this point. Feels good.
I mentioned last week I'm going to be a sobbing bitch throughout this part of it, and it already started. I cried during this chapter, which, if you know my rule, means this is chapter of the week already. But her sobbing as she's like, I promise you're going to have the happiest life in this loop than any you've ever had, is like a moment that really got to me. So 10 out of 10 chapter in my mind. I really, really enjoyed this.
All right. And now let's move over to Chainsaw Man. So Chainsaw Man showed up and killed Yuko Devil, it looked like. So this is no good. Yoru reaches into Yuko's body. This is chapter 110, A Ring in the Night, by the way. And she declares Yuko leg sword. So now the leg of a person that Asa likes is in her possession. She can probably do some damage with that. And she looks over to Chainsaw Man and says, hey, remember me? And oh, Denji, he sees that Asa's in her underwear and just fucking stares. Like, big old pervert. But then a hand emerges from the guts that he has cut out of Yuko. That girl that she was going to kill has survived. She's still alive. And I think that Denji asks her, "Hey, do I know this person?" Which, like, how would she know? But I think he's actually asking about if he knows who the girl that has survived is. This girl is already clearly traumatized because she's been in demon guts. And he goes, I saved you! And of course she's terrified because he has a chainsaw-headed demon. And she says, don't eat me! He's like, I'm not going to eat you! Wait, I'm Chainsaw Man. I don't eat people because I'm a human on the inside.
And I've never eaten multiple people before. That is
only
never...
one time.
I've eaten a person. He didn't ask that. He said, do I eat people? No. Plural? Absolutely not. Not no siree.
And then in a very eventful page, Denji says, how about I show you my human form to prove it? Very natural, very, very, very cash. While Yoru is flying through the air in mid-swing to cut his head off. But Yoshida springs into action and summons an octopus and drags Denji away by force and pulls him through the floor, and he's gone as Yoru swings through and fails to kill him. And Yoru, just kind of looks around, sees that Chainsaw Man is gone, and she gets really sad and depressed. She's like, is he saying that I'm not even worth his time? And then she starts yelling, like, I'm gonna kill you, Chainsaw Man! Show yourself! in a different part of the school that has suffered way, way, way less damage, Yoshida drops Denji on the floor and reminds him, like, you're so hopeless. I told you that I would stop you by force if I had to. And Denji's really sad, and he yells out, but that was such a natural reveal! No, it wasn't, Denji.
Not particularly, but, you're trying, buddy.
The day goes by. News spreads very quickly about what the hell happened. People have heard that it was Yuko that turned into a devil. And there are rumors apparently that Yuko was bullied in middle school, so it seems that she's got some pre-existing problems with this beyond just her relationship with Asa. And it's really bad because it's like, this girl turned into a devil and killed some of her classmates, and this one guy's just like, yeah, it just goes to show how the mentally weak get tricked by devils easily. It's like, fuck you, dude. Asa has a dream, which is apparently a recurring dream, which is that she is running down an alleyway and the ground is littered with dead chickens. At first, I try not to step on them, but it fills up with so many bodies that I can't avoid it. And there's darkness ahead of me. And then I always wake up at that part. Which, dreams in Chainsaw Man that are ominous and foreboding, that never comes into play.
There certainly won't be another thing involving, like, doors or something like that that certainly feel disturbingly like something from part 1.
And as we all know, there is no reason to be afraid of the darkness in Chainsaw Man. Like, come on. Asa startles awake. She goes to get, a drink of water. But as she is going to walk back, the doorbell rings behind her. It's like 1:30 in the morning. And so she's like, what the hell's going on? She asks who it is. And it's Yuko. And Yuko just says, hey, Asa, sorry. Asa goes to answer the door, and Yuko flat out tells her, don't open the door! I turn into a devil, and if I see you, I might try to eat you. Asa opens the door immediately, no hesitation. What could like you said, what bad could happen from
nothing bad happens for opening doors. Power, no!
But I do love that Asa doesn't actually hesitate at all. She's like, no, I gotta help my friend. But she answers the door, and Yuko is human-sized again, but, like, she's clearly very demonic now. She's got, like, scaly tentacle things instead of arms, and they're coming over her face, and she's trying to hide the hoodie. Yeah. And she just says, I told you not to open. And she's, like, embarrassed, but also she might try and eat Asa. We'll see how that goes.
Yeah, I think it'll be interesting. This is like a fine like follow-up. Chainsaw Man's been either very funny or very action-packed, and this one's not really either of those, but still good in both ways. So I'm satisfied and excited to see more.
Yes. This chapter took some directions I was not expecting it to go in, but I am now very dramatically intrigued by what's happening here. There is no Kaiju number 8 chapter this week, although there was a showcase with some art that was very cool looking.
Yeah.
Oh boy. World Trigger!
World Trigger! Nick, everyone loves when you have to talk about World Trigger.
2 chapters! 2 chapters! Okay. Stuff's kind of happening this time. Like, kind of. So, 221 and 222, the away mission test, parts 24 and 25. We've been here for so long. So Osamu's on the phone with Kodera, and they exchange information. He specifically asked Kodera about thoughts on the initial exchange in the battle sim matches, because the rules say that fellow members of our original squads can't communicate. They established, like, okay, we've got Kotori here and Miura over there, so we can't have them talk with each other. But other than that, the rest of us can talk just fine. Which sounds like it's an essential, like, component of the test to see how everyone else will talk with each other. But anyway, the initial exchange is basically, just like the first time that units attack each other. And so Osamu says, I think that basically determines the outcome of the whole match. And because in the special assignment we got yesterday, it asked us why there are 3 squads pitted against each other in rank wars. And the reason I came up with one of them is that one-on-one matches would give too big an advantage to a squad that has more people in it. So if you have two squads going at each other, one wins the initial exchange, they're left with a larger number of units, and then basically that settles it. The other team can't really come back from the numbers deficit. And so they go over that, and everyone's like, oh.
Osamu learned engaging. Or initiating, I'm sorry.
Oh, gotcha. And so they go over that, and I was like, huh, yeah. And then one of the people over on Kodera Squad looks over at Kitora and is like, oh, she looks kind of frustrated. Yeah, I guess she's just kind of used to just like being awesome and winning with her own strength, basically. But as they talk about this, everyone kind of agrees with Osamu's interpretation of things, and so they're like, okay, yeah, that I get that. They go over some more information. Ui speaks up and says, yeah, so the data on enemy unit stats and skills is full of holes and gaps, and it feels like it's kind of being filled in at random and has nothing to do with what happens in the matches. So I figured we should, compare notes and fill in blanks in our respective data. So they share information with each other in the purest sense of the term, essentially. They also draw particular attention to Katori's skill Omni-Penchant, which allows her to equip 2 penchant skills, which Katori thinks is useless. So I'm sure she's right.
She's not the best theory crafter.
No. She'd be terrible at thinking up combos, yeah. So they go over that. They ask basically a question that is kind of a very obvious, like, how do we make up for Osamu having shit Tryon? And Kodera gives them a big tip over using blades instead of guns, and also using Ray Gust instead of a shield, because it's way more efficient stat-wise. And so that gives them a little bit of a leg up. And then they hang up on a Kodera squad, and then they also talk with Utagawa squad, and it was Yuma's idea to talk with them about this because, Yuma's like, duh, Osamu gets good ideas. So they share information that way. Then after they get done with that, Yuma brings up that he thinks that what makes their squad currently unique is that they've got 3 captains on the squad. Because they've got Katori and Sua and Osamu all together. And so they're like, well, why is that a big thing? And Osamu says, well, okay, so the initial exchange is the key to each match, yes. And I think that basically Mizukami's squad is doing well because he's found one good way to go about it, which is that one person handles all the teamwork, as opposed to everyone having to figure out how to handle multiple units together. Mizukami knows how to do that because he's a captain, and our squad has 3 captains, so we could kind of do what Mizukami is doing by dividing up our units into mini squads to work together, and so we do all the coordination that way, as opposed to all these people who aren't used to coordinating having to do it on the fly. Makes sense.
Yes.
So
solid logic all around, all around for these guys.
Now, what's going to happen? I feel like
oh my god, we're like halfway through one of 2 chapters.
They're like, okay, we'll figure out what happens next with all this other stuff. They also say like, oh, and Oki can handle the snipers for people who don't know how to handle snipers. And then they're like, we're gonna get more units tomorrow, presumably. Mizukami, we cut to at the end of the chapter, and he's like, there's more units to deal with. Hey, guys, whom I very much respect, I gotta tell you something. And chapter 228 is about him coming clean to the squad and saying, like, look, I've been doing this on my own. There's too many units for me to handle. So I need you guys to step up and start working with me on this. Teruya gets really fucking pissed off about this because she's like, why'd you keep this a secret from us? And he's like, because I didn't feel like you needed to tell I needed to tell you until now. She demands an explanation, and we start getting reactions from the monitor room because Maki's like, yeah, she's kind of like causing trouble right now when it's not an opportune time to do this. She's taking away people's time to react to the situation by kind of drawing in a personal grudge over him keeping a secret. Yes, he was wrong to do that, but she shouldn't be handling it this way. She should at least do it at a different time. Mizukami spends a lot of the chapter explaining himself and eventually just kind of like makes everyone agree with him. They bring up the point of like, from his point of view, they would have had this argument at some point anyway, and he wanted to basically get his way if he was going to have the argument. It was just a matter of the order would happen, and he wanted to guarantee that he could get this early advantage for them. And that's basically it. And then, you know, he says like all the right stuff and convinces them to work with him. And then Tariya finally is just like, all right, I'll do it, but can you say please? And I was like, why is it? No. Look, I'll do my best even if you don't do that. But there's something about when someone asks me to please do something for them that lights a fire in my soul. And who is this woman? What is this character trait?
She is from Kakizaki Squad, and she's one of the most promising young rookies. And it's like, I'm sure these characters will be important. Like, I'm now understanding, like, okay, obviously Katori was important, and that match that followed the Tamakoma 2 match, like, that we had to see was important because it really showed us what Wakamura and Katori's relationship was like. So I'm like, this character must be important down the line, but it is definitely a moment where you're just like, please, the firework factory. It's been so many years.
Look, kids, I can do another kickflip. No.
I just want to see the firework factory.
It does have a cute moment because all the people monitoring it give her a bunch of points for, I guess, getting everyone fired up. But anyway, we close the chapter on one more Osamu point, which is he's got an idea regarding the universal assignments, but he says, I'm not sure if it's against the rules or not. We'll hear his idea next time, presumably. That's it. At least we had 2 chapters this month, and at least some stuff got done.
Yes, we did. And yet again, we had another scenario where, like, a chapter ended with, like, Osamu being like, hey, I think I know what's going on, and we get a little bit more detail, and it's like, yeah, like, he doesn't have, like, a big moment, but he's had, like, 3 or 4, like, small kind of cool moments. And then there's another, it does it again, where it gets to the end of the chapter, he's like, I think I may have an idea about how to approach this. Not sure if it's against the rules. And it's like, oh, some sneaky trick. Credits. And you're like, fuck. I just want to know.
4 weeks.
Good stuff, regardless. Nick, let's talk about Eden Zero, chapter 215, From the Depths of the Earth. So Shiki had...
From the depths.
Yeah.
30 stories high. Breathing fire. It's a fucking boat.
So Shiki is victorious. He's defeated Ziggy, and Pino's back and is like, hey, did you always know it was Master Ziggy? And he's like, no, I figured it out when he called you little girl, because that's something you would call a human girl. And Pino blushes, and you're like, fine, cute moment, whatever. And Shiki's just like, yeah, I've gotten, like, this power up because, like, Grandpa's power is falling to me like gravity. I just stole that shit. You're like, sure, I guess that's how it works.
Don't know if he's had that with literally any other enemy, so this is convenient.
Yeah. Eden Zero, getting ready, bunch of alerts going on. And like, holy shit, I think we need to prepare for departure now. A ship flies in, which I guess is Justice's ship, but, like, it looks like a creature. I had no idea what was going on. But he's shown up carrying Hamura, and he's like, hey, she helped Justice out of a jam, so I'm here to return her. Like, one good favor deserves another. And they're just like, hey, we're not going to fight. Everybody really should leave, because the chronophage is coming. Like, Operation Planet Eater didn't need to happen. The chronophage is already on its way. Shiki teleports in, because now he has the wormhole power, and he's like, hey, guys, you got Hermit's message? I can teleport now. Let's go. And kind of like Justice, or not Justice, fuck. Eraser. God, how could I get these characters confused? Eraser's like, this is Shiki, the man with the ether of a demon king. And Shiki's like, hey, you guys got to get out of here too. I got to go find Elsie. And Eraser's like, don't bother with Elsie. Apparently, her and Justice want to talk alone. let's not be a third wheel in their conversation. They'll get out when they need to.
Yeah,
so
give him time to bone down.
Yeah, you gotta give them like 5-10 minutes, man. It's been a while.
We don't see them. I'm assuming that they went to Bone Town.
Dude, they have to be hate fucking at this point. Like all the tension that's going on, it's wild. Before Shiki can leave, Eraser just asks, mind if I ask you a question? What are you guys after? And Shiki's just like, adventure. We're going to find Mother. And he teleports away. And everybody's like, I don't know why. We get like extra detail of like Feather confirming, like, yes, that Shiki now has Ziggy's power and must have defeated Ziggy. So it's like just kind of a weird little dude ball moment.
Every time that she shows up in this, because a lot of times she's got her eyes closed, I'm like, wait, isn't Witch dead? And I'm like, oh, right, it's a different character.
Nick,
it's a different
please. Character. This series has such distinct character designs.
I went wait, is that Witch? No. Is that Sister? No. Is that Holy? No. right, that one.
Feather, how could I forget? The Eden Zero is launching, and they're like, what are we going to do? Half of our engines are all exploding. He's like, who do you think I be? And he looks over and sees her back, and he's like, I shouldn't have talked about how hot I thought she was before. Yar.
That was a pretty big own goal on my part.
really self-owned me. Hermit goes to talk to Shiki, and he's like, hey, I know it must have been hard to kill Ziggy. And he's like, no, I'm sure it was hard for you guys too. Hermit's like, hey, by the way, the real enemy Ziggy was talking about, the one controlling him, like, when Ziggy left the Eden Zero 18 years ago, he said something else, something to Elsie. He said he couldn't bring a ship that big to Grand Bell because it's a theme park. But that doesn't make sense. When did he build it? She doesn't have any response. She's just like, it was probably under construction when we were in outer space, that blank period in our enemy. But we don't know why he would have built it. But I guess he wanted a spare ship in case something happens to the Eden Zero, which must have been just a translation error. He must have meant the Eden's 1. Because they're in the Eden Zero and talking about it. Yeah. So that part I had to like sit there. I was like, what? Am I reading this wrong? And he's like, this part may be a jump in logic, but I think it may have developed its own will. One that was in opposition to Ziggy's goals. He's like, its own will.
How?
And then suddenly, whoa, all the radars are going off. Blah, 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 blah. And they're like, wait, the AI was too advanced. It surpassed the intelligence of humans and the intelligence of machine. And
that doesn't make any sense.
A beast explodes out of the ground. He's like, it were here all along. And a big monster shows up, and Hermit's like, a ship with unparalleled power and matchless intellect. That is our real enemy. The Edens won a ship with the mind of its own. Bum, 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 bum. I also liked Mass Effect and the Reapers.
Bum. Didn't we say that this was a possibility of what the villain would be, and we were like, no, that's pretty realistic. It'd be stupid, but it could happen.
Yeah. I mean, they've been teasing that stuff out for a while, and it's like I'll say, devoid of a lot of things, I don't actually have that big of a problem with this. As I said, I actually do like I did like Mass Effect, which was awesome. Like, Mass Effect 1 did this exact same twist. Like, where in the end, you're like, oh, the bad guy we've known the entire time actually is being controlled by something. It's the ship he's driving. Like, we never once thought to consider, like, the ship itself is actually, like, a hyper-advanced, super robotic race that we didn't even know existed. And it's, like, kind of a cool twist. I think this is just going to be dumb because it's Hero writing it, and that just tends to be the case. But as it is right now, I'm like, all right, I'm okay with it. Like, it's dopey, but like, I'll go with it. You know, let's have fun.
I'm going.
I don't agree that it shouldn't. I don't know why it has such a fish-like design. That's an interesting choice.
I'm going to set an over/under on how long it'll take for the Eden's 1 to, in any scene it needs to communicate with people, start just like having some sort of like holographic projection or, substitute body that's just humanoid.
Shiki needs something to punch, Nick. So obviously, like, duh.
And also, is it going to be, like a Ziggy design villain, like lots of horns and wings and claws and stuff? Or is it for some reason going to be a busty woman? Like, You know,
It makes sense. I'm glad they're doing something with it, but yeah. All right, we shall see. We'll see.
Akane-banashi! Story 37, Rakugo Quest. The color page, obviously, is a Dragon Quest kind of tribute thing. That's neat. It's the end of the day at the performance hall. All of the Zenza are going home. Akane is thinking about what was established in the previous chapter, which is that, she's kind of lacking in, Rakugo stories that she can perform in her repertoire. We also learned that Karashi actually performed the opener in her place because she didn't have anything that she could, perform instead. And we get a little bit of Aoyama, that's not his name. The Tate Zenza is, kind of like, hey, if you don't know stories, you just gotta learn more. He's just kind of like reading her mind, and they're kind of making fun of her because she's so, easy to read and stuff. But he says, hey, you got a ton of talent. I know you'll pick them up in no time. And they part ways so that it's just Karashi who is with Akane, and he establishes, like, the only ones I know are Jugemu, Praising Children, Tenshiki, Scared of Manju, and Sangojin. And he is like, oh my god, and he just like collapses to his knees, like, I lost to you, and you only know 5 stories. I thought you were doing Jigema just because you were like trying to challenge yourself. And he's like, yeah, do you realize the position you're in right now? And Akane says, well, my calves do feel a little swollen, which I feel like I missed part of the context of the punchline there. I guess it's because he said position, but But he says, look, Rakugo stories are divided 2 ways. Tate, which is vertically, and Yoko, laterally. The higher the tate, the higher the difficulty of mastering the story. At the tip are the oneta, big epic stories that are long and complex, and only a Shinichi can properly perform them. Like Shibahama, which is what the voice actor did, which is a nice little reminder of Hikaru's place in the story. Whereas the Zenza-banashi are the easiest to remember and memorize. Almost all of your stories are Zenza-banashi, the most basic Rakugo stories. Since you're at a decently high level, one would have assumed that you had already learned a ton of skills, but it turns out you've only got the starter abilities, and this is envisioned as Akane as an RPG character who's way up at level 36 and only has 2 attacks.
Oh no, just the basic skills.
Which is, I think, a very, very good dorky metaphor to use. It really gets the point across very quickly.
Yes.
So it's like, I'm kind of disappointed. I kind of assumed that you would just have him more in your repertoire. But Akane says, so what you're saying is, I should learn a bunch of hard stories right now. And Karashi's like, no, you idiot! And he gets out a notepad and starts writing down stuff. And he says, look, a Zenza can basically only perform Zenza-banashi. So you shouldn't be looking at the tate. You should look at the Yoko, the lateral difficulty. So here, I'll write instructions out so that you can understand stuff. And we continue like the Dragon Quest style explanation of stuff, which has lots of fun visuals, but I won't go through the entire thing because it would take a while to decipher, basically. Basically, she needs to broaden her repertoire of specifically low-level stories, Zenza-banashi. And Akane's like, okay, this sounds kind of tough, and it also, like, it's important who you learn them from, right? And Karashi agrees, yes. People tend to think each apprentice is just kind of a replica of their master's style, but actually, Rakugoka learn from a wide selection of masters. And on the other hand, the story can be told in a lot of different ways depending on the performer. So you need to have a discerning eye on who you receive your lessons from. And my master has got a policy of not allowing a Zenza to learn from anyone else. So if you're going to take outside lessons, you need to check with your master before. Why are you smiling? And Akane's got this really goofy look on her face as she's like, because she's like, oh, I'm just thinking, like, because I'm kind of lucky to have you around, because I'd be in trouble if you weren't around to like teach me this stuff and the active listening and everything. So thanks, I'm really grateful to you. And Karashi, the coolest man in the world, says, cringe. just while he's walking away from her. And he's like, "Come on, like I'm not doing this to be all buddy with you. Like I'm way ahead of you. I've got like twice as many stories in my repertoire as you do. I'm just doing this because it's not fun to destroy someone who's not worth the trouble." Aww. He's being Sun.
He's a little nice, just deep down.
And he says, "Yeah, next time that we meet, I'm gonna be so far ahead of you, you'll acknowledge my superiority." So. Akane off panel just goes and tells all this stuff to Shigema, and we cut over to him saying, like, "Yeah, it's about time that you learn from other masters." She's a little bit startled by this, and he's like, "Oh, did you want me to like be more selfish and protective of you?" No. It's just that I wanted to make that man accept my dad's Rakugo, and that's what drove me to become your apprentice. Even if this is what a Rakugoka is supposed to do. And Shigema kind of reads her mind and says, "So you're worried that this doesn't actually align with your goals if you go about things this way." But he asks if she is familiar with the term Shuhari. We're learning a lot of different stuff in terms of Zenza Rakugoka terms here. But he says Shuhari is an expression that is like a 3-part progression. Shu is protect, learn what your master teaches you. Ha is break, learn from other schools. And use that to evolve your craft. Re is depart, elevate the art that you have refined, and establish it as a style all its own. So you start off, focused, you expand, and then you become your own person. And he says, look, that's just how all Rokugoka go about mastering their craft. Shinta was no exception. If you only learn from me, then yeah, you'll get closer in style to me and Shinta, but you're only ever going to be a weaker imitation. If you don't learn to surpass us, you'll never truly reach your goal. I've had you focus only on Zenza-banashi to train you in the fundamentals, but now it's time you move from Shu to Ha. You should leave my care and learn elsewhere. Don't worry, the last 7 years weren't for nothing. Learning from a different master will not diminish what I've taught you. And there's a little bit of an exchange between them because the guy's like, "You could have told me this before." And he says, like, "No, then you wouldn't have learned the lesson I was trying to teach you," and all that stuff. And Akane's, got more work to do. She's got to go back to working at Yasakate. And as she's leaving, Shigema thinks to himself, learning many different styles is the key to gaining that specific art. Cross the fence, go beyond the boundaries, and learn, Akane. It's a very cool chapter. I really like the excitement of, taking the context away from, Akane's in trouble because she's only got these few stories to, Akane's got so much to learn, and that's exciting because she's got so much growing to do. It's cool.
Yeah, it's like a fun chapter in a lot of ways. There's a little bit of a weird moment towards the end where it's like, oh, she's moving on to a different place. You're like, I don't really have that much of a connection to her current school. Like, I think I care about her, like, fellow Rakuga at that school more than I really care much about her relationship with her master, since all that happened sort of in the past.
The backstory.
Yeah, so there's a little bit of like a weird disconnect there, but I am super excited at the idea of watching her find her style of Rakugo. I think that's probably what I'm more excited than anything about right now.
Yeah, I think that we're probably moving into a stage of the series where, yes, she's going to be moving to learning from other masters, but also I don't think we're going to move too far away from that core group of her Anikis. Yeah. So I am excited by this.
Yes.
Huh! Blue box.
Chap
76. Didn't mean to say, which sounds like song lyrics. It's got that cadence to it.
Exactly.
It's the last day of the training camp. They're having a bonfire. Whee! Yay! Meat, marshmallows, and stuff. Ayame is making faces at Kyo, because she's still pissed off over him, saying that she had no experience in actual relationships. Though she admits to herself that she's never really had a long-term relationship or actually felt love for someone. But she says, that's why I want to cheer on people who are madly in love, thinking of Hina. Taiki is off by himself, and he starts to shiver because he's cold, because it's cold outside. And so he goes to get his jacket from the gym. And so Ayame very obviously just pushes Hina towards going there by sending her to check on the sound equipment. And Hina just kind of goes along with it. And while Ayame says very obviously, and you can take as long as you need to get back. So yeah, Ayame goes into the gym. She immediately runs into Taiki, who's found his jacket. And Hina does quickly realize, like, oh, yeah, she kind of did this on purpose, right? But she realizes it just too late after she's already told Taiki why she's there, which is to mess with the equipment. And so Taiki says, oh, yeah, I can help you look for it. And yeah, they don't find anything. I assume that they were doing all the searching while Hina knew that they weren't going to find anything. But she looks out through the window and sees the bonfire from there. And they start commenting on it and talking about stuff. And she kind of seizes the moment a little bit, and she says, hey, why don't we watch the bonfire from here together for a while? And Taiki's like, yeah, sure, I could use a break, because I've been running around so much. So they sit on a bench. They start kind of teasing each other again over, their different stuff that they've been up to at the training camp. And they, reminisce over some stuff, like how they went camping during their second year and played cops and robbers. And they go over, like, how Taiki would get away by doing Naruto stuff and acting like he had shadow clones by dashing back and forth really quickly. And they just share a fun memory over that, and they start to smile and laugh together and stuff. And as Taiki is smiling and laughing, Hina's looking at him, and she kind of starts to reach her hand across the bench that they're on towards him. And then she thinks about Taiki talking with Chinatsu, and she curls her fingers away from him, and she gets kind of sad because Taiki doesn't love her back. So she instead brings up the King's game from a few chapters ago, and she asks, what were you going to answer when we were playing the King's game and you were, asked about, who you had feelings for? I kind of thought you were going to actually just tell everyone you liked Chinatsu-senpai. But I guess you're not the kind of person who would just spill your feelings for someone during a friggin' game. You could if you wanted to. That was my promise from the start, and I'd be totally fine. I just, got to work harder than you. But to be honest, it stings sometimes. But, I don't mind it because, I love you so much. And she says this with this, like, blushing smile on her face. And Taiki starts to think about saying something, but Hina's like, oh, let's go head back. Yeah. And she thinks to herself, like, I didn't mean to reiterate my love confession to him while we were here. But as she's starting to go, Taiki calls out to her, and he says, I'm sorry. And when Hina asks for clarification, he says, I can't go out with you. This big 2-page spread that shows off the whole gym, and it's completely empty except for the two of them, as he gives her his answer.
Yeah, I mean, this in one way feels like a huge moment. In the other way, I'm like, it doesn't, because he's already said before, I'm not interested in you like that, per se. I don't feel this is as definitive as people are reading it to be, if only because I just feel like it doesn't change the circumstances, per se, really. Like, I feel like she still has all the motivation. Like, she hasn't fallen out of love with him, so she still has this motivation to be like, I'm going to make you notice me. And we know that he does have some level of conflicted feelings about her. So, like, it's one of these things that, like, it feels like this is a huge moment. Any other time, I'm just like, I feel like I don't know what changes at this point, if anything. So,
I don't know. Maybe if he gives a more definitive rejection, maybe that'll start to move things.
He's like, I think your face is ugly.
I just don't like you. I just can't stand to be around you. You fart all the time.
Your feet smell.
And also I'm willing to kind of give Blue Box the benefit of the doubt when it comes to revelations that will alter the course of these relationships and stuff. But I definitely see your point. I'm also very much used to shonen romance story. We're going to make it like there's going to be a big progression, and then the next chapter take it back.
Yes.
But I guess we'll find out next week.
We shall see.
Because Blue Box is at least good for following up on the cliffhangers it leaves off on. Ginka and Luna, Chapter 9, Varokian Magic. So Luna is confronting the mage that kidnapped Minigan, Karula, now that she has dealt with his twin apprentices. And she's like, hey, I gotta get Minigan back because he's supposed to go on adventures with us and he doesn't belong in a cage. And she dashes forward. Karula utters some sort of runic language, which means don't move. And she suddenly just stops in midair and she can't move her body. Karula goes and grabs the cage that Minigan's in it. The twins remark that Karula is the strongest magician in the guild. And he says to Luna, against the likes of you, I do not need to draw my wand. He gives one of the twins Minigan and demands that they seal it in a dark room so that no human ever lays eyes on it and it never sees the light of day again. Harsh. Luna remembers some of the time that she had with Minigan, in particular their conversation about how he's never had friends because he was so busy training, and how happy he was to be with them. And she starts to move with the power of friendship and force of will. And she breaks free of the paralysis that she seems to be under and launches straight into an axe kick on Karula, but it is blocked by some sort of band of magic. He utters the word crush and it smashes her into the wall. Luna's fine, but so he's just like, all right, I'll just keep on saying it, and just says crush over and over and over again and impacts her into the wall repeatedly. He says it probably upwards of like 4 dozen times or something like that.
It's a lot.
The twins start to get worried that Luna's going to freaking die because, you know, she's a nice person in their eyes. And they ask for him to stop, but he says, what for? This is the most fun I've had since... and in that moment, Luna decides to get serious, and she starts to unleash more magic, which Ginka specifically told her not to use unless he met someone who gives off the same scent as you. And she has torn off one of her gloves with her teeth, and it is literally oozing with magic power. Karuha recognizes that the magic is not Varokian, it is more primal, pure, dark magic. And he asks her if she aspires to a greater power, and she's like, no, I just want to take you down. So he draws his wand. He's gonna get serious as well now. And Luna says, hey, if you're so obsessed with power, why do you want to get so powerful? And he says, what an ignorant question. The answer lies in emotions far older than words. There is no reason. There doesn't have to be one. And if you can't comprehend that much, you have no chance of beating me. And Luna says, no, there's always a chance. Because there's nothing magic can't do. Which is nice. Yes. And they start to clash. There is weird visuals. That's about all I can say. There are eyes on everything and spikes on everything. That's all I can say. Very dense magical power, but then they get interrupted because Ginka, the main Ginka, flies overhead and proclaims mild intoxication, and it casts the two of them into a fancy restaurant, and they've both got champagne glasses. And then the illusion dissipates, and Ginka has kind of mostly melted on the ground because he used up too much magical ability. So Karuha recognizes what has just happened because he recognized the spell, and he gets very teary-eyed and sniffly, and he says, Ginka, it's been so long! And yeah, Ginka recognizes Karula, who tries to get up to him, and he says, now we get to kill each other again, and Ginka just palm to the face to keep him from getting too close. That's where the chapter ends. It's a very wildly paced chapter.
I was gonna say it's a real whiplash there at the end, but it's fun. It's a fun chapter.
I wasn't bored. All right, I have a puzzle for you, Quinn.
For me. I accept.
You. All right, here we go. Park Slope Pilferer. Perplexingly persists in holding professional post.
I'm just gonna say Braun Strowman because I was trying to think of who's a wrestler in the news recently, and he's definitely the number one.
That fucking idiot. No.
I'm sorry, say it again one more time.
Park Slope Pilferer. Perplexingly persists in holding professional post.
Is it Kane?
Ooh, interesting. No.
Okay, I'm trying to think of like who else has like an actual position. I mean, there's Jesse the Body Ventura, but
This is just in regards to a job.
okay.
It's
Park City Pilferer.
Park Slope.
Park Slope. I might need to look what Park Slope is.
Even if you look up this, I'm not sure if you'll get it.
Is it Eddie Kingston?
No.
Okay, I think I might be stuck on this one.
Okay. The answer is JTG.
Oh man, no, I was not getting JTG. My guy, that's
As you probably looked up, Park Slope is in Brooklyn, where JTG is from. Pilfer because he was in crime time and they would steal stuff. And the rest of the clue is just people's confusion that he held a job for so long, considering he was like never on TV for like the last 4 years of his contract.
it was a website that was like, when was the last time JTG wrestled? And it got to like 500 or some odd days or something like that. And I remember when he got released, he just tweeted like, y'all motherfuckers ratted me out or something to that extent.
Yeah, why did I have to check my phone today? I think was what.
Yeah.
So yeah.
That's a good one. Nick, I have a game I would like you to play. I have a wrestler in mind. I want to see if you can guess it. Now, I mentioned before about stakes. I'm just going to throw this out there. We've got about maybe like 5 or 6 episodes, maybe 8, depending on if we do like a Christmas episode, of episodes left this year. I'm thinking if you have a winning record at the end of this.
Oh boy.
One thing happens. I haven't decided what the winning thing there is.
Okay.
But if you have a losing record, the audience gets to pick one of our recommendations.
Okay.
Gathered together.
Pure audience vote.
Yeah.
Sure.
That's something I'm thinking. I don't know. We'll have to feel it. Because I don't know what happens if you win. There's got to be...
And I'm sure they won't punish us.
No, there'd be no way it could be bad to just let the audience have an unrestricted pick of what we have to review. That's not pornography or something weird. That's the little asterisk.
Yeah.
Can't be something weird like that.
All right, fans. We're going to be reviewing Bodie McBoatface, the manga.
Oh, I'd be so excited. All right, Nick, so I have a wrestler in mind.
Yeah.
Are you ready? 1 minute, starting now.
Are they currently a wrestler?
Yes.
Are they in AEW?
Yes.
Okay. Have they been in WWE?
Not really, no.
Not really. Okay. Are they... Oh, fuck. I don't know any AEW questions. Have they been a TNT champion?
No.
Okay. Have they held a title in AEW?
Yeah, they've held a championship.
Has it been a tag team championship?
Yes.
It has. Okay. Was it the Trios championship?
No.
Okay. Was it a member of SCU?
No.
Okay. Have they held... It was a tag team championship only. Is it a member of FTR?
No.
Is it a member of... Oh, fuck. I've got to go back. Is it a member of the Elite?
No.
Okay.
All right. That is
it...
You have your last guess here. Your last guess.
Is it Luchasaurus?
I cannot believe you got it on the final guess shot in the dark. It is Luchasaurus.
I just thought about you. I was like, of all the ones I haven't narrowed it down to, which one would Quinn pick? I
shouldn't have been so obvious. I should have said Jungle Boy. I should have thought somebody else, but I was like, You scared me because you guessed in the AEW right off the bat. I was like, shit, I thought we'd waste a little bit more time going through WWE wrestlers.
Well, I would have asked if they had been in WWE. If you had said no, I would have gone over there immediately.
Yeah. When you said that, I was like, shit, like, Luchasaurus really hasn't been... He was technically in developmental for them, and he may have shown up on NXT to some degree. I don't think he was there when it was NXT, though. I think it was when it's FCW. But
he was part of the initial NXT roster.
Yeah.
But I have no idea if he was ever even on television.
So like,
but yeah, I completely forgot about that aspect of it by the time I got down to him. So
there we go. Well, next one on the board. So stay tuned, guys. Nick might steal this. We have to figure out what happens if Nick wins.
Yeah.
Maybe all of the audience have to shave their eyebrows.
God.
Every member of the audience. It's crazy.
Send in your pics of your shaved eyebrows. All right. PPPPPP. Chapter 56. Nonetheless. Very weird picture of Lucky with, or is that Fanta? I can't even tell. It's Fanta because he's got the jewelry. His hair looks like Lucky's. Sorry. So Lucky has just gotten word that their mom is sick. He wants to go to the hospital with Fanta, and Fanta's like, "No, I'm gonna do my performance because I hate our mom." And Lucky starts complaining about how this isn't fair, and Fanta says, "That's true. I guess I'm just Lucky." Such a villain. But yeah, he says, "Yeah, sorry that I invited you to this event. When I think about it, you were cast aside by Dad, and I've got no right to say anything about the scandal. Even if the Otogami brand's value diminishes, I can raise it again without involving you." All right, the sincerity of the apology dropped off very quickly as this went on. Lucky says, like, "I just want you and Mom to be happy, and if you see her, then things could change." And Fanta says, "Not going, because I don't need things to change, and I can't trust her, so I'm not gonna believe in her." And he even looks to Mimin and says, like, "It's serious, right?" She says, "Yeah, so you should take it." And Mimin takes Lucky's hand and says, "All right, yeah, let's not force Fanta to come with us. Rachel's called a car for us." And Lucky is still like calling after Fanta as they're leaving, saying, "But I want us all to play piano for Mom again." And Fanta says, like, it's like the guards are pulling the protagonist away while he's like, "Oh, sorry for your last 10 years, but that's impossible."
It's definitely a more melancholic moment, but it definitely does feel like they're being dragged away. I know they are technically by like the seriousness of the situation, but yeah, it does feel like he's the evil king and they're like being dragged away by the armed soldiers.
Also, I'm pretty sure Mimin could just like fully pick Lucky up over her head and carry him out of there if she wanted to. But Fanta thinks back to, being a kid, having, nice mother-son relationship with their mom, holding hands and hugging and stuff. And he says, "Yeah, those were wonderful days. And they ended when I wasn't chosen, and I couldn't believe in anything. Nonetheless, I thought about it. She loved me, but she didn't choose me. She says she treasured me, but I don't believe her. No one has just one feeling, and I'm sure she actually really loved me, so I'll continue to believe your words from back then. But I won't believe in you. You chose not to choose me out of all the feelings you had, Mom, and I'll never believe you again. I can never trust you. I hate you." And
Ouch.
we see this, we see a flashback of him like first putting in, his jewelry and piercings and stuff. And after his mom has left, and then looking in the mirror and saying, "I'm looking cool today too." Oh, he's the jewelry of repressed feelings. And he says, like, "Yeah, I took pride in the feeling of being loved, and not being chosen was humiliating, so instead I chose to love myself, and I worked hard, and the audience's applause told me that I was valuable, and I loved that, and I did my best to give the audience what they wanted as gratitude for their applause, because I wished they would never stop clapping. It's the same in my personal life. The me I can love, the me the audience wants, I've worked hard to cultivate the cool me." It's cooler if I'm popular with the ladies. It's cooler if I'm good at my job. The more the Ogami brand is valued, the cooler I am. And since I'm famous and I have money, weird people are attracted to me. But I knew nobody really cared about me, so it didn't matter. Above all, I am always self-aware, so I'm fine. But being on stage is the best. If I look cool, then right now, I have value. People will care. And that's why I can never make a mistake. I can never let my value go down because of a mistake. I never got nervous in the past because I was loved and I expected to be treasured. As a genius, I was effortlessly cool. I had value. And it's all right. Even now, my genius is valued and well regarded. And as long as I have that, I'm all right. My circumstances aren't at all tragic. I live in a mansion. I have everything I want.
I roll.
A handsome face, a nice body, and this genius which won't desert me. There are other geniuses beside me. There will be someone I can't win against, thinking about his father, but it's all right. My genius is cool, and it's mine alone. And then he pauses, and the president thinks, it's no longer mine alone. Because Sadame has replicated the fucking theme park. So, oh no, the cracks are forming. His incredibly fragile ego is going to be shattered by the end of this.
Yeah.
I can see the cracks right now. He just got through all of that very self-exposing.
I'm very, very cool. I'm very awesome. I'm the only one like me. Oh shit, that other guy. And it's just...
So he's like, no, it's okay. I'm the one who challenged him. I can think about it again later. And being a genius wasn't the one and only thing. So then what the audience wants is, and he turns to Mao, who I believe is the woman who was helping to organize the event. She has like not shown up during the actual event at all to this point. So I could be misremembering that. And he says, hey, so the audience will switch after this event. So in that case, so we cut into the audience from there, and they're talking about how like, oh, I kind of feel like, like going home because, it felt like we experienced the theme park and, we went on the train ride home. So the plan that Lucky and Sadame worked on is seemingly working. And then Fanta appears in the audience next to the people who were talking and says, you want to go home? And they're like, no, it's fine. And he says, no, it's fine. I'll let you go home feeling really happy. And he starts to descend the steps back down to the stage. And that's the end of the chapter. As we wrap up this very exposing look into Fanta's psyche.
Yeah, imagine how wild it would be. You're the motherfuckers just sitting in an audience like, oh man, I feel like kind of heading home. And the performer walks up, he's like, maybe everybody should just go home. You're like, oh no, this is going to go bad. All right, we have like a bunch of series still to get through, so I'm going to rush through Mashle, Magic, and Muscles number 131. The Light Visionary and the eldest son, Rio Grants, has shown up, and Rio Grants is really good. He fires off a bunch of light and hits Doom and does a little damage, and he's very charismatic while he's doing this, doing it all. But Innocent Zero is just like, nope, Doom's too strong. Once he's been hit with an attack, he'll instantly be able to counter it. I'm the only one with the chance of defeating him. And Rio Grants is really gaining enemies. Like, once I get going, I can't be stopped. Fires another shot, and this is when Doom would block it, like he does. Slight miss, it's all over. But then another one fires, hits Doom right in the face, and he's like, shit. Why didn't I block that one? Excuse me. The timing, everything's just all different. He's like, I'll stop the next one. Hits him right in the face. And Order Battle explains, yeah, Ryu is just like this. The tougher the foe he fights, the worse situation he's in, the more his magic grows. So he just gets stronger. And he's really saying that. He's like, I'm only going to get better from here. But then Doom activates 70%, becomes even more like younger Toguro than he already was. But then just gets his shit punched in. Like, it looked like he was about to turn all around. But then Ryu blasts him with a whole bunch more. And just ends the chapter by saying, I told you, once I get going, I don't stop. I'm so hot, I'm on fire. Try not to get burned.
Yep.
It is a supremely cool moment and very awesome.
Yeah, he's gonna get his head punched in next chapter.
He is, but he might have to go to 80% to do it, or 90% or something.
Something like that. Yeah. The Elusive Samurai, Chapter 85, Kaisen 1335. There is like a very small bit of downtime at the very beginning of this chapter. There's like some weird, frankly, interaction between Ayako and Shizuku that I could not entirely follow. And then fighting starts. Oh no, an enemy force again. We're just jumping into more of these generals showing up. Lots of stuff happens, and then Horse McHorserton runs into the enemies and starts attacking them with this big old naginata. He starts charging into the fray. Everyone surrounds Tokiyuki to try and help him. We get the quote-unquote scientific explanation of how he gets his horse to be strong, which is if you use your feet to get the horse's heart pumping, it stimulates the muscles and makes the horse stronger. Sure. So, yeah, he's charging in, attacking everyone, slicing a bunch of people up with the naginata, and then they see that Uesugi is the enemy commander at this point, and he introduces himself, and also the tactician from the previous fight is also there, and he also sends forth his like pseudo zombie soldiers to attack them, and everyone's like, "Oh, these guys look weird." Fubuki charges in to just kind of like gauge them. They use a bunch of weird sword techniques where their sword swings change in midair. He manages to counter them, and he says, I remember this sword technique. I've seen it before. I didn't know his name, but he had this tricolor tattoo and kanji on his forehead." And Uesugi is like right fucking there, 20 feet away. You know, the way that like tacticians are on the front lines of battles. And he says, "Oh, can you do an impression of him? Because I don't remember his name." And Fubuki goes, "Yeah!" He was like that. It's like in the middle of this battle, and Uesugi is like, "Oh, him! Yeah, he escaped from Ashikaga Academy," which seems to strike a chord with Fubuki. He's like, yeah, my clan took over the failing educational institutions at the Imperial Court, and we've been running secret training facilities since my grandfather's time, and I added a laboratory." And Fubuki is quiet and looks perturbed by this information, which Tokiyuki notices, and then Horsey McHorserton charges through the soldiers again, and oh no, he's heading right towards them.
Yes. I mean, I'm sure it's good. It's surprising we moved so quickly into like the next like action scene, and I guess they're setting up for this one to be like slightly about Shizuko, which I'm all for. I think she definitely deserves to have some spotlight shined on her that isn't just she speaks to spirits. So I'm excited for that.
Which, by the way, hasn't like been relevant for a long time either.
No, not really. All right, let's talk about Black Clover, page 343, Black Clash. So Ichika has donned her super special mega form, and she's fighting with Asta, and he's like, "I can counter stuff. I'll sever any magic or Yoku that's affecting me." And she just kicks him in the face. So doesn't really work that way. Asta thinks he has her. She's too fast. She does this big attack. She's like, "Yeah, if he'll never catch me. He's pretty fast too." They're like, "Shit. In terms of sheer Yojutsu and magic, our skills are roughly equal, but the real contest is how well we can use Zetten." And Asta's going in for an attack. She blocks it and basically like kicks him right in the face again and taunts him like, "There's no way. I can feel in your ki your anger. Like there's no real. You have no resolution, no conviction. Someone like that can't beat me." And Asta's like, "I can feel in your ki your anger at the captain and me, like, but there's more to it in your heart, and you don't." Like, "I know there's more going on in there." And she's like, "Don't talk with me like you know me." And Asta's thinking like, "I've got it. I know the form for my Zetten. If I fire a perfect Zetten, I can win this." The two of them are about to strike, and then Ryuya steps in between them, and it seems pretty clear that Asta did not have it there. He did not actually have a Zetten that he was about to use. Because Asta notes there, he's like, "I couldn't cast Zetten back there. I completely lost that one." So Ryu's just like, "Hey guys, it looks like they're here." And we go up to 3 angelic figures floating in the air. And the middle one, Nick, it's Angel's sister.
It definitely seems like it is Sister Lily.
Yes, I think that is intentionally yes.
I think we may have seen the other two guys before. I feel like they might be guys who we saw a long time ago, but I'm not sure.
I definitely feel like they are designs that are relatively familiar, but I cannot for the life of me place them. Like I truly am like, I feel like one of them might have been like the prisoner guy, but
maybe.
I like one of the prisoners, but I don't remember truly the other ones, unfortunately. But yeah, I do think they are people we know.
I'm a little bit upset that they showed up because I feel like a lot of the stuff that's been happening since Asta arrived here has just been really good without, the main plot coming back. But I guess we've reached the point where we do need to kind of move things forward, and there needs to be, an impetus for Asta to actually start to master Zen and stuff like that. And it would be more dramatically appropriate for him to start to get the hang of it in an actual battle as opposed to in a sparring match.
Yes. So. Good stuff. I'm excited to see what Asta's new form is going to be.
Yeah. All right. Let's finish off with One Piece Chapter 1065, 6 Vegapunks, which
Ooh, looks like we lost Nick there for a second. Yes, we've lost Nick for a moment. I will carry on.
Big old shot.
Bravely.
Oh, I can hear you just fine.
I know.
Can you hear me?
Nope, not now. I can hear you. All right.
Okay.
I don't know what you said there.
I was just commenting that there's the 2-page spread of the One Piece film Red promotion.
Yes, which stay tuned, guys. I think we will have something to potentially talk about that on, and also if you go check to our Patreon, there's something new you can find there as well. So, yes, One Piece Red.
That's made a little bit of money, I've heard.
Yeah.
Just a little bit. Yeah. So, in the actual chapter, God, I don't even remember what happens in this fucking chapter.
We basically just meet the new Vegapunks. We finally get introduced to all the other ones.
There's a
conversation and then there's some big stuff happening at the end, I should say.
Yeah, that too. Brooke and Zolo are still talking at like the entrance to Labafay's, and Caribou's there, and they're not surprised to see him. Did they establish they knew he was there? I don't remember. But he is there and talking to them, and Zoro's like, "Yeah, you helped our captain in Wano, so go away now." Inside the lab, Usopp and Nami are looking at like all these technological marvels and stuff. Vegapunk 2 says the island's power source is fire, which can be converted into all types of energy, to which I say I think that that's actually not the most, like, the best energy source to get from, but whatever. And they say that, like, there is, if only there was such a thing as an undying flame, we could create our own sun. And then she walks into a door that doesn't actually open up. She just walks through it. And the others are like, wait, how do we get through this? And then, like, you just walk through it, guys. Just walk through it. You know, it's a door you could just walk straight through. You know, the way that doors should be. She gets contacted by Edison, one of the other Vegapunks. And when they go into a new room, there is a Seraphim that looks basically just like a young Jinbei, but also combined with King, with, you know, the dark skin, the fire.
The Lunarians, yeah.
Mm-hmm. And so they're like, what the hell? He looks like Jinbei, but he's also looks like a kid, even though he's as big as Jinbei. And then he starts to fire a laser, and they're like, oh my god, it's a pacifista. We've been set up. The government's attacking us. So they engage with the Jinbei clone, who, you know, uses this, like, swimming under through land, like, water ability, grabs onto Nami by the neck.
Specifically, Frankie points out, I know that power because that was Senor Pink's power.
Yes. Sanji, of course, gets pissed off because he laid his hands on Nami and just full-on flaming kicks him away. Everyone starts to pour on attacks. Robin tries to go after him with her giant and hands and stuff, but he just kind of swims through them the same way, so no effect. Usopp attacks with a skull blast grass thing. And then Frankie gets set to fire his radical beam, which we don't see. Sad. Because we have to go and meet more of the Vegapunks. There is a little robot-looking guy called Edison. He says some stuff that I don't really understand because he's like, he just saw a laser. That was a close one. They're not ready for laser tests yet. So I guess it missed. I don't know. I didn't get to see it happen.
Yeah, he's just saying like he shot a laser. That's crazy. The Seraphim are still being tested. They're not ready for laser tests yet. So, yeah, he must have dodged or just survived.
Lilith Vegapunk 2 is pissed off because they, were attacking a Seraphim, which is very valuable to them. And then Edison goes, I just thought of a new invention! Just like the real Edison would do. It's probably worthless. And then there's another robot that's kind of big and chunky called Pythagoras the Thinker. And it's like, battle data!
An excellent name. An excellent name. Like, I know all of them are generally named after, like, science figures, but yes. Pythagoras is a fantastic name.
Definitely a lot better than every other name among them, so... And then we're introduced to another Vegapunk who is a woman who eats stuff.
York is the best. Well, it's not just she eats. She also shits for them as well.
Yes.
Because they know, like, hey, and sleeps for them as well.
Yes.
And we see her full design, and she also is in that situation where it's like no bottoms. And I was like, if my sole work in life was to eat, shit, and sleep, I also would not wear pants. So suddenly the aesthetics of this universe are making a slight bit more sense.
So yeah, she handles all of the other, the boring things so that everyone else can just like, do science all the time, basically. And then we're introduced to Shaka the Good, Vegapunk 1.
Daft Punk.
Yep, he's very Daft Punk, yes.
I mean, it's always kind of been there with the name Vegapunk, but this was the moment you're like, okay, this is the Daft Punk character.
He introduced himself to the Straw Hats who are here, and he has also frozen them all to the floor because they're wearing the shoes that they put on and didn't think anything of it, I guess. And he's like, look, I can't trust any pirates. And they're also like, well, wait, we just met a woman Vegapunk and heard an announcer Vegapunk. And he says, yes, I am also Vegapunk. And Usopp says, am I Vegapunk? Which is a great joke.
It's a great joke.
And Shaka says, does this island look like the future to you? And Frankie says, well, I mean, between all the mecha sea beasts outside the Vega Force 1 and the air systems, this place is like the super future. So he's very excited. And Nami says, yeah, and I've never seen a town that looks anything like this. And they're like, yeah, I want to see everything. It's crazy. And Shaka says, this place is the past! And then we cut away to Luffy's group, and Luffy has just broken open something, and he's like, hey, check it out, Chopper! This thing's real solid metal! And everyone is gazing upon it like, oh my god, did this thing used to move? And Jinbei says, this looks like future tech, but it looks too old for that. And Frankie, back over with his Nami and Usopp's group, says, what do you mean the past? And Shaka says, if I told you that Egghead wasn't the only one, that there was once a kingdom as highly advanced as this, that actually existed 900 years ago, would you believe me? And Jinbei and Luffy and Bonnie and Chopper have come across a robot graveyard, seemingly, overgrown with moss and all sorts of stuff. Well...
Yeah, I mean, this is a huge moment where we're slowly starting to now fill in the Void Century and everything regarding that. Big chapter there. We get introduced to the rest of the members of the Vegapunk 6 or whatever they're calling themselves.
One of them's a buzzard. One of them's a rabbit.
Yeah. I love these designs. Like, one, I love Pythagoras on, like, I don't know, a very like instinctual level. Like, when I saw Pythagoras, I was like, I relate to you a lot. I don't know why, but I do. Also, I feel like I've seen this character design before, and I don't mean Robocon for anybody who's thinking that. Like, I know the robots are all designed after very famous robots. It's not what I'm referring to. I just feel like this design in One Piece I've seen before, and I can't place where exactly. I also really like York because she just has a different face than most One Piece women do. Like, it's given like a comedic edge. So I'm like, I feel like I could pick you out of a crowd, even though your body looks the same as the rest of them. Like, your face is different, and I'm very excited for that.
She's got them chubby cheeks and the freckles.
Yeah, and like the frog face and everything like that.
Yeah.
Oh, okay. The Dragon Ball, maybe that's it that I'm thinking of. But yeah, I think this is like a cool chapter. We're getting lore. We're digging into this. Like, we're finding out stuff. And there's a lot of just funny jokes as well in this chapter. Like, as you mentioned before, am I Vegapunk? And then also, like, Usopp makes some joke at Nami's expense, and in the background she just kicks him. She says "future kick," and I'm like, I don't know why, but that's very funny to me.
Well, they're in the future. Of course, it's a future kick. Funnily enough, the only diatribe that I heard about, or I guess dialogue rather, about this chapter that I heard online was the appearance of the Jinbei Seraphim and the fact that Sanji kicked it. And people were like, "No, Sanji kicked a Sun Kingdom powered guy way stronger than the one that Zoro beat." And I'm like, why are people still talking about this Zoro-Sanji rivalry? Like, the point of their rivalry is that it's childish and stupid to argue about.
The funnier part is the Nami part where she's like, "Do you think just because you're a child, does mean I will go easier on you?" Yeah. Oh, Nami really just can't have it in her to do that.
Too big a heart. She can't. Yeah. So there's a lot. There are a lot of funny moments in this. But I think that during the montage of people being introduced for the Vegapunk Collective, my brain just kind of like
it's a lot of information.
Refused to encode it into long-term memory, which is why I don't remember One Piece characters. This is more characters.
Oh man! When we do the next contest, I'm just gonna like sneak in 2 Vegapunks. Just be like, Nick, which one's this?
Why do they have numbers on them? This is stupid.
Oh man. Okay. Let's do MVPs and character of the week. I already did my series of the week is Undead Unluck. It made me cry. I really want to give my character to Pythagoras just because I fucking love that name so much, and I don't know why, but I like that design. I won't, although both him and York are both, I think, really 2 cool characters that were introduced that I'd like to see more of. I think I'm going to give it to Rio Grant. So we didn't get a lot of time to talk about Mashle, but I think it was really cool and satisfying that Ryu got to kind of have a chapter where they actually just schooled Doom, who's otherwise just been no-selling everything. So it's that rub you get when you get to eliminate Brock Lesnar from a Royal Rumble. I mean, he eventually kicks your ass afterwards, but you did it, guy. Good for you.
Yeah. Who all has eliminated Brock Lesnar?
Didn't Lashley?
Not a lot of people.
I was gonna say, didn't Lashley do it or something like that? I remember like some big beefcake doing it or something like that.
I mean, well, Drew eliminated him from the Rumble and then went to WrestleMania and also beat him for the title, so he never. But anyway, enough wrestling. We gotta wrap up. My chapter of the week, I am going to go with Akane-banashi. I really like this chapter, just the way everything is explained and then drawn. There's this sense initially of like, oh, there's this kind of like disappointing quality of Akane's, but then it's like, oh, but now it's like a big adventure she's setting off on to grow and be a more complete performer, and that's fun. And my character of the week, I'm going to give to Fanta. For the very exposing internal monologue where he keeps on telling himself that he's going to be okay because he's got all these talents and he can just force people to love him. It's very sad. So that's it for me.
Yeah. All right. Let's head on out.
Yeah. Did you say who the audience?
Oh yes, sorry. The audience, by the way, picked Fanta as the MVP, and it looks like there is a tie between Blue Box and One Piece for the chapter of the week. Sorry, thank you for reminding me.
Also good picks. Guys, that's going to do it for Weekly Manga Recap. We want to thank you all for joining us. Here on twitch.tv/RoloT, we record the show Wednesday evenings, usually starting around 7:30 Eastern Time. I hope that this wasn't confusing for anyone who, didn't do the daylight savings time stuff this week. We want to thank you all for listening to the show, which you can do on twitch.tv/RoloT, on youtube.com/Weekly Manga Recap, which you can watch the video versions, which will occasionally have title cards, including for this episode, made by Steve Mann, whose artwork you can check on twitter.com/SteveMannArt. Also, the YouTube version has the opening sequence made by Milo Jackson Slitz and Winslow Cheddar. If you want to check out more Weekly Manga Recap, our episodes are all available on weeklymangarecap.podbean.com in audio form, as well as on iTunes, Spotify, and other podcast sharey kind of apps. And you can also check out patreon.com/Weekly Manga Recap, as Quinn was explaining earlier. There's bonus content that has been put up recently and more ahead. If you want to keep up with all the goings on, you can follow us on social media. Nick F. Time is me. RoloT is Quinn. And WMR Podcast is the just general podcast account, which puts out the announcement when the show begins. And you can also get that if you join the Weekly Manga Recap Discord server, which is a great community, discusses chapters as they come out, and all sorts of fun stuff, including a link to the Google Doc maintained by Ninja X3i, who keeps track of things that we would forget about otherwise, including recommendations. It's almost like I planned that, but I never do. So our next recommendation we're going to be working on is a series called Crossing Time. This is a collection
I know this. Semisonic did it. Crossing Time. Time to head at all the places you will be from.
It's just lost the tune immediately.
Crossing Time. Something, 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 something. Whiskey or beer.
I'm not going to explain what the manga is about now. I think that's going to be a much better pitch for it than anything I could say. And now I won't forget what manga we're taking as recommendation, because
Crossing Time.
We've got to close the episode.
It sounds like it's about leaving college, but I think it's just about giving birth.
Okay, goodbye.